Everyone.
Good morning,
You're
Mayor.
good.
Good
You're
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. As we are getting settled, today we have budget workshop on streets. What's today? Yeah, 18th. Streets, stormwater, water, and wastewater. But we're
Great.
not doing. Oh, go ahead, Mr.
Yes,
Zinni.
ma'am. Yeah,
Maybe
good morning,
I've got
Mayor. Right, Mayor, members of the council. This is our...
Mayor, could you call roll, please?
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Would you please call roll? We already did? Yeah.
Mayor Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Councilmember Roland Barrera.
Here.
Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Billy Lerma.
Here.
John Martinez. Ben Molina.
Present.
Mike Pusley. Greg Smith. City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Present.
Miles Risley. Mayor and council, a quorum of the council, and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
Great, thank you. Mr. Zanoni, go ahead.
Okay, great. Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Mayor and members of the
Morning.
council. So this is our fourth budget work session, and today we're going to cover streets, and then Gabriel, our interim director for Public Works, is also going to go over stormwater. We know that's an important issue, especially given the recent flooding from this past weekend. We're also going to go into our gas operation, and then we'll go into engineering department and an overview of the capital budget. And then we have at the end of the presentation, water and wastewater. So we'll see how we do time-wise. I put those at the end in case we don't get to them or if we don't have enough time left. Those are two very big and important operations. So at the council's desire, we could do those in a separate work session depending on how we do today, time-wise. And then just as a reminder, next Thursday, we have our final work session, unless we have one. Yeah, we'll have our final work session. And we're going to cover economic development then in that work session to include an overview of the new department. We'll go over our hotel occupancy tax, the American Bank Center, the Visitors Bureau, the Visit Corpus Christi Convention and Visitors Bureau, airport, and then we'll also go over the council allowances. There's some travel increases given increases in fuel. So we're going to go over the council's budget. And then finally, we'll do potential adjustments due to our community input. So last night, we concluded our fifth community work session, and every one of them had great attendance. Councilman Hernandez was the sponsor last night. We had great turnout, and we want to thank CCISD for letting us use their wonderful auditorium at the Veterans High School. It was a very good facility. So that's an overview of where we're at, Mayor. Just the bigger picture is we have a public hearing in the chambers on the 30th of September, a public hearing on the tax rate and the budget here in the chambers, and then City Council is scheduled to adopt the budget with a second reading on September 6th. So we're getting close. I know we're tired, but we're making good progress. The council is doing a great job, and the community has been as well, engaging with us. And so with that, we're going to turn it over to Gabriel to cover our very important street operations.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Council. Gabriel Nojosa, Interim Director of Public Works. Today I'll be presenting streets and stormwater, which both reside in Public Works. So first, we're going to go over streets and traffic. The streets mission statement: manage, maintain, and develop the city's transportation system. So within streets, you can see we have in-house paving, in-house concrete work, signs, our static signs, our traffic signals, all encompass what we call streets within Public Works. Just a little bit about Public Works. So Public Works is responsible for over 2,900 linear miles of streets in our network. And last year, within the streets department, we fulfilled over 21,600 calls for service. We installed 50 number of Vision Zero improvements installed. So your flashing LED stop signs, hawk signals, important, to keep pedestrians and vehicles safe while on the roadways. Also, we're responsible for 56,000 traffic signs. So that's the static traffic signs that you see around speed limits, school zones. Also, concrete roadways. So concrete roadways was something, a program we first developed last year. So we got about $1 million for concrete road improvement. So we're responsible for a little over 73 linear miles of concrete roadways. Also, 252 number of signalized intersections. So that's just the intersections. So you can figure about 4 to 5 sometimes lights per intersection. Next is our organizational chart. So you'll see organizational chart with, on the left side and on the middle, you'll see the street operations, which include support services, engineering services, traffic operations, and then our in-house street operations. So total within Public Works is 282 positions, with street positions 160. You'll see some stars by some of these labels. These stars are where we're planning some improvements this year to add positions to those services. So our achievements. So this year, we got close to 43 lane miles of cities and roadways rehabilitated and completely reconstructed. So this includes in-house and contractual services. We also completed the first phase, the field investigation of the PCI assessment that you passed as an improvement last year. So now that the field work is done, we're compiling that data and putting it into our new pavement management software. Next achievement is a $6.75 million grant secured for 5 pedestrian safety capital projects. Also, Revive the Drive was completed. So the portion from Ennis Jocelyn to Louisiana was completely rehabilitated. But also, we're looking at a plan to keep that icon of Corpus Christi looking just like it looks today. And that's about 25.2 lane miles of Ocean Drive right-of-way. Second, this is the second year of our Vision Zero. And like I mentioned before, we implemented more than 50 traffic calming and traffic infrastructure improvements installed. Performance measures. Just some of these important performance measures that occur within the street department. So PCI is always something that we talk about, something that's kind of our bar, our standard, where we want to go as a city. So currently, our estimate for this year is 62.88, and our target for next year is just under 65. So just a little caveat to that, these numbers are based on the old PCI, so these aren't based on the new data that we just finished with that PCI investigation. So, once we get the new PCI in our software, we can start running new numbers, we'll update this number for you. Also, lane miles in-house. So you'll see 21 and 22, we completed about 10 lane miles of roadways in-house. So this is the first time, a new business process that was brought to Public Works. The in-house crews were, mainly, spot maintaining roadways. Now we're fully milling and overlaying roadways. So this is a new business process. So you'll see my target for FY23 is 20 lane miles. I want to be able to double our production. I think we're able to. I think our vacancy rate's coming down. I think if, we have a good plan to get there. And I want to say that's going to be our target for next year is doubling the lane miles that our in-house crews will be performing. So the number of signalized intersections connected to our traffic management center. So like I mentioned before, we have, about 250 signalized intersections. So each year we've been progressing where we can connect these to our TMC and be able to view these in-house on our phones, on our apps. If you call, you say, what's going on at this intersection? There's a lot of traffic. Maybe there's been an accident. Maybe there's something that's causing the traffic to queue. It allows us to quickly bring up that intersection on our phones at our office. So that's a pretty important process that we're going through right now. Next, so this is the funding that we're proposing for each of our 3 major street improvements. So you'll see in FY21 where we started at 78 million. Last year we programmed a little over 121 million, and then this year 136 million. So that's a total of $336 million that are being programmed towards our streets, residential streets, collectors, arterials, all 3 of those categories. So you're looking at about a 12% increase in that funding from last year to this year. And this is just another representation of that graph. So you can see how each year we've been progressing in each one of those categories. So you'll see the blue. The blue is where our in-house and our SPMP reside. So you see we started with 33 million, up to 42, now up to 46 million. Our red is our CIP program, our bond program, so that's our arterials and collectors. You'll see this year we have 66.02 million that are going to be dedicated to those streets, and then 24 million is our RSRP, so our residential street reconstruction program. How do we fund all this? So this is our famous bubble slide. So all these bubbles around the center circle, these are where the funding mechanisms come to fund these programs. So you'll see in street maintenance, most of the funding comes from our street maintenance fee, and we'll get to that in a little bit. 6% comes from the 6% revenue from the general fund, so that's at 16 million. And then other revenues, if we have fund balance or any other revenues that come in. So you'll see all those bubbles that make up the street maintenance. Arterials and collectors, like I mentioned before, this is our bond program. So you'll see most of the funding for this program will come from general obligation bonds. And next, the residential street reconstruction. So most of this comes from the 2+2 property tax and also the one-time general fund transfer. And you'll see this year a new bubble, which is the general obligation bonds closeout, the 4 million. So that was the bonds that we reappropriated into this program for this coming year. So now that we have all that funding, you know, how does it get divided within our street maintenance fund? So this was the street maintenance. So our projected budget for this year is $46.4 million. So the way the pie is cut out, you'll see the majority of the pie is the kind of purplish or the light purple. That's our SPMP program. So that's contractual services that we use for collectors and arterials. So the next big one is going to be Holly, coming up from Crosstown all the way to Airline. So that'll be our next big SPMP project coming up. So the red is our in-house. So that includes all our in-house paving, our base and pavement repairs, and also our in-house engineering also. So traffic engineering, the green, so that's our block grant that I was discussing earlier. And also that includes any HSIP programs that we've had from the past. The pavement preservation, so that's where our concrete, that $1 million is located. And also that's where the potholes and base failures operations reside within that $5.2 million. And then of course, traffic operations, which is our signs and signals. Next is we actually have a separate fund for the RSRP program, which is programmed at 20 million. You're not going to see the full 24 in our operating budget because the other 4 come from CIP. So the 20 million is just what's actually in our operating budget. So just a little high-level funding highlights. So under our street maintenance, this year we have around $200,000 allocated towards the Ocean Drive Sustainability Program. And I'll get to that slide and you'll kind of see what we're looking at as far as a 10-year plan. The Ocean Drive media improvements, which is also a 10-year plan, and also the right-of-way management team. So that's going to be a new service that we want to enhance for this coming fiscal year. Also an in-house survey crew and utility coordinator. So RSRP, you'll see the general fund at 2.7, the one-time general fund transfer of 6.1, and then the reprogrammed of the 2016 bond proceeds at 4 million. And of course, the new one is the Type B funds. I think Type B we used last year for Elizabeth Street. This year we're going to be using for the industrial park next to Bill Witt. Some traffic budget highlights, Vision Zero. So the Vision Zero block grant that I was talking about, there's 5 projects. The total grant award is about 6.3 million. We're looking to do about $2.8 million worth of that this year. Our Vision Zero operating funds are around 900,000, and those have been reoccurring since the program was initiated. Traffic infrastructure, so emergency traffic infrastructure installations at 800,000. Our wonderful backup battery system that we've been installing for This will be the second year of a 3-year program. Also, Airline and Ocean Drive intersection and median improvements at $1 million. So also, we're proposing a traffic engineer for development services, and I'll get to that slide to explain that.
Gabe, if I
Yes,
may
ma'am.
ask, what is the Airline and Ocean intersection? Can you give us a little bit more info on that? I mean,
So that's where the Ariza apartments are
Yes.
going. So that intersection is going to be totally redone, new mast arms, because I believe right now they're on span wire.
what does
so-
that mean? I'm sorry.
Sorry. So they're hanging on wire instead of on the metal poles. So they're, basically outdated. That intersection's outdated.
Yeah,
And with
if
the increased traffic, with the apartment complex and certain turning movements that we need within that intersection, it's going to be a total improvement to that airline intersection.
Right,
And
if
the
you-
median,
Yeah, if we go to slide 26, AV control, or somebody, you'll see the picture of it there. It's really an embarrassment. I mean, in a modern city, that's what we have right there. The traffic signals are on a wire. It should be a metal mast arm. That's
Yeah.
right by
Right.
the $46 million or $35 million new complex. So, and it's not, it's a dangerous intersection the way it's configured right now. So right now, the Public Works Department has a consultant
Correct.
designing how it will be reconfigured. And then instead of the wires, the lights hanging on a wire, there'll be a metal
Yes.
mast arm.
and so the median is it in the middle? Remind me, or is it on Airline, or is it out in the middle on Ocean? Do you recall?
There's a median on Ocean.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, so the intersection right now has a median triangle right in the middle, and there's signal poles. There used to be there was an accident that cars run over. So right now it's in the span wire since then. So this improvement will provide removing that median triangle to make it more like a regular intersection, and then bringing that parking lot driveway that is coming from the apartment. So it's more to create a four-leg intersection to be more safe, yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Councilman Hunter, you have a,
Why is that gonna cost $1 million? I mean,
I know
that's
the.
absurdly expensive. I drive by that every day. I've grown up literally going by that my entire life.
At minimum, when you upgrade to mast arms, an intersection, you're looking at $600,000 to $750,000 minimum.
So we're giving that apartment complex that much money versus the rest of the city who's not receiving any money for their,
So
or
the
having to wait
the
for another
intersection,
decade for their streets.
yeah, the intersection is more for Ocean Drive.
Intersection is fine.
It has a span wires in the case of a storm with high winds and
Just
those.
redo the lights, don't redo the street.
So we will be putting steel mast arms.
They're doing an entrance into the,
Yeah,
Apartment
Councilman,
complex.
the span wire is a dangerous scenario.
okay, so that's $1 million?
Well, you're right, you need to replace it with a metal mast arm,
Oh,
so
that's not
it's
$1 million.
expensive stuff. And then the intersection as it's configured right now is hazardous, and it always has been, and so we thought as part of the ocean.
How many wrecks have we had there?
We can get you that data.
I'd like to
Yes,
see
and-
that, because I've never seen one.
And like we said on August last year, we had an accident that run over a mast arm that was in the median triangle.
So you're taking away the right-of-way for us to continue to go straight.
No, there's
With-
no right of way, not to interrupt, but there's no,
Well, I'm not
yeah.
done yet.
okay.
You're gonna put in a four-way stop. Right now, it's a T. And that one direction going this way gets 90% of the light time, which is probably 95% of the traffic. So we're gonna turn that into a four-way stop and make everyone wait there all the time?
That's a
So
four-way
currently, the
intersection.
cross street, the cross street has airline. It has time already, so it's just the same time provided to the other approach. So we're not really changing. So it's a airline and ocean, yes, sir.
Yeah, it will continue to be a three-way stop, right? A three-way intersection?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, Councilman, I don't know if they misuse terms, but it's still gonna be a three-way intersection, not a four-way.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir. So, we know, because I drive that a lot too, so,
Those bicyclists, they
and
don't wanna
bike it
wait.
as well,
They
right?
don't wanna wait right there for you.
Yeah, no, right, so there's movement going north on Ocean, there's a movement to take a left onto Airline, and then when you're coming on airline, you can go left or right. And so all that needs to be reconfigured with the design, with the pattern that exists today, but reconfigured with a safer lighting system and curbs in the median.
Because I'll tell you why it bothers me so much. On the way here this morning, I left at 8:25. I didn't get here till 8:50. It took me 25 minutes to drive 7 miles. And I hit every single stoplight on the way over here. It's the reason. So we're gonna add more. My assumption is when this goes in, if there is gonna be an entrance into that apartment complex, there will be a longer wait time. And
Yeah. That
that used to be my biggest complaint when I first joined city council.
There shouldn't be an increased wait time. I mean, even if you have, you're still gonna have to allow that, I would say, northbound traffic, and southbound. Even if you add a southbound, I mean, that light intersection is still gonna be the same. I mean, it might be, a few seconds for some turning movements, but, the Ocean Drive traffic still has to stop for when airline, starts to move, so. We'll check on it, we'll make sure.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Hatcher? I'm sorry, Councilman Pusley.
Councilman, could you turn your mic on, please?
I thought I did. Okay, there it is. I'm sorry. I didn't hit the button hard enough. Several months ago, Peter, we talked about the timing of our traffic lights in Corpus and how we weren't really doing a great job of that. Or does that fall under their department, or?
It does, yeah. So Diego here, who spoke earlier, he's our traffic engineer.
Okay.
And we know that's an issue. So we're doing, it's a citywide issue, and it's one of those things that doesn't get fixed overnight.
Yeah.
So they're doing numerous intersections to improve those. You can only do so many a year, just given the effort that it takes. So several corridors are being timed today, and they get fixed. Diego may want to elaborate.
Okay.
But that's that is an issue. We need to probably upgrade our command center. There's a traffic control center that we have. This city's done a little bit better job than others in terms of having the signals hardwired, so they're connected with a fiber, with cable versus with cellular devices.
Right.
So that's a better solution because you can lose timing and signalization with a cellular device.
Right.
So our signals, the goal really should be to have all of our signals hardwired to a command center where you can with a computer control timing.
Yeah.
It's a significant issue, especially on the south side, and we need to work with TxDOT, especially on their corridors that they own, because we all know that the Staples and the Everhart, it's real tough. It's points of the day over there. But
Yeah.
Diego, which corridors are we working on specifically today?
So, as part of Division 0, next year we'll have a training assigned to signal coordination. So, where we are going to bring an expert that has 40 years of experience. So, that expert is going to provide more training to our staff to continue. And once we have that training in place, we'll continue to improve. But currently, we're improving signal timings throughout the city. We looked at all the corridors. We have corridors assigned. So we'll continue to improve that.
Who owns the lights? I'm assuming it's TxDOT, the ones at 37 and Chaparral, and where those streets all cross there by the federal courthouse. Is that TxDOT or are those ours?
37 and Chaparral.
Those are
downtown?
city maintained signals.
Okay.
The ones on I-37 when you're coming Chaparral.
Yeah,
the
like
water.
if you were on Chaparral and you were going
Yeah.
to go over to the Railroad Inn Restaurant
Yes, sir,
or
those are
the
ours.
Ortiz Center or whatever,
Correct.
those are your?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those are the worst time traffic lights in the North American continent. So,
And the one next to the hospital.
yeah.
We need to look at those, Gabriel.
We'll
Yeah.
review
Yeah.
those.
I mean,
Yeah,
I see traffic jams there constantly when there shouldn't be, just because the signal light timing is off.
Yes, sir.
And if you're coming off of Shoreline Drive onto the 37 to go north on 37,
Mhm.
they're really bad.
Yes.
So I appreciate y'all looking at those.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Councilman Hernandez?
Speaking of traffic lights, I've had some complaints recently about the school zones. And do we control those, or does how does that all work for us?
We
control
have
those.
165 school zone flashers in the city.
Yeah, but that's our signals, right?
Yes.
We-
Yes.
We
We
manage
own
them.
them, yeah, we
We
own
own
and
them and
control
we do
them.
them, right? Okay,
Yes, sir.
so, you know, unfortunately, you know, the problems that I come across where you have school zones that are on arterials. Obviously, Saratoga is a state highway. Do they manage that?
Yes.
Those light signals
Yes.
or those school zones?
They're responsible for the flashers in there.
Okay, they probably need to review Saratoga because of the addition of the schools there.
Yeah,
but-
I think there's still.
Yeah, there is a meeting next
Yeah.
week to talk to TechStot about the new Carroll High School school zone. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So-
that's not, there's confusion there, so I
Yeah.
know, because my daughter goes to Carroll, so it's not, that's why I bring it up, not because, it's not in my district, but I don't mean to interrupt, it's just my daughter goes there, and I drive through it all the time.
And it blends into most precious blood. So we
Well,
gotta look at the
well,
whole
the
thing.
thing
Yeah.
is, Most Precious Blood is in elementary, and they have different school hours than the
Yes.
high school, so their lights go off, but then there's no lights for Carroll High School.
Yes, so TxDOT will be installing those for that corridor.
Okay, so the ones were specific for me were on Yorktown, where Lipes intersects with Yorktown. And for the Luther Jones Elementary there,
Correct.
you know, you have kids crossing that Yorktown, and it creates a real backup because CCISD is, you know, makes Lipes into a one-way, and it really backs up on Lipes. So I don't know if there needs to be some signal, consideration for a signal there during those traffic times, and then maybe a flashing yellow light when it's not. But I think that needs to be reviewed because I don't have any kids that go there anymore, but it would back up completely. And when we were doing construction on Lipes, it was even worse.
Yeah.
But I would take a look at that to see if there, because, you know, you have one crossing guard that has to get across 4 lanes to get those kids across the street. So I want to say we need to take a look at that in terms of at least a review for some of our school zones. And I know we got another one coming up over on Yorktown, and we'll have to deal with that on Starry Road when that comes across. So I think we need to, seems like we're on the back side of it, not on the front side of it.
So we do have our Safe Routes to School program. So that started last year with $750,000 that we were going to look at a minimum of 3 schools. And, you know, we've added some other, you know, projects that have come up. So depending on how far that 750 stretches, we can start looking at more areas with that Safe Routes to School program.
And you know, this came up in our discussion with CCISD for the Starry Lane School, the Creekside School, that we need to have more interaction with them up front in terms of planning their traffic and how they put their schools in place, because if we don't have enough entrances to that school, it just becomes a traffic nightmare. So I think you need to have, you know, at least someone from your department interact with them in their planning ahead of time beforehand in order to address
You'll
those.
see that improvement right there. It's-
Councilman, I would say, and Gabe, I think that needs to go further, and you and I had this discussion. Peter, we have to create, and this has
Right.
nothing, we really don't need to talk about this in this moment, but we absolutely have to create some protocol. We all know that, in regards to CCISD and the city of
Yeah,
Corpus Christi.
exactly.
Traffic, I mean, just,
Yeah.
the list goes on.
Right, and
So
that
let's-
should extend
but
to
it
other
shouldn't
school
be-
districts.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't just say
Like
CCISD,
London,
but
yeah,
mainly,
the high
you know,
growth ones.
CCISD.
Yeah, right. So Superintendent Hernandez, who met with us just
Right.
recently, they agreed that, we raised the issue, but they agreed that they need to be meeting with us to go over their capital programs, where their new schools are going, well in advance of breaking ground.
Right, but an agreement verbally is not
Okay.
protocol.
Yeah, we need to
So what
formalize
we
it.
need to do,
Formalize it,
opposed to,
okay.
you know, one person from this department, one person from the other department, one person from the, we need one person at the city to stay on top of what is going on, how are we working, what is CCISD, how are we doing? Hopefully, they're gonna do the same thing. We did verbalize that and made it clear, but, you know, it's incumbent upon them, but let's just make sure that one person, a central person from the city
Okay.
is on top of, you know, what is going on. It's, you know, with CCISD.
Okay, we'll memorialize it and get a
Sure.
protocol in
I think
place.
that'd be great, right,
Great.
Councilman?
Yes, and I have some more questions, but I'll wait until he gets through his presentation.
Okay, well, we've got a couple more questions on this subject, so we'll come back to you. Councilman Molina.
Thank you, Mayor. Back on And this is a quick question here. Back on your slide number 8, you talk about the average pavement condition index, and you made a comment that these aren't the newest numbers.
Correct, they're based on the 2018 study. So the 2018 gave an initial PCI to all these streets. You know, you have a degradation factor. So these numbers are where that study resides today. You know, improve a street, it goes up to 100. So it's using the old PCI numbers from the 2018 study for these.
But you have newer numbers, they're just not inserted yet, is that correct?
Correct. So they've basically drove every city or every street in the city. So now we're compiling that data. You also approved with this project a pavement management system, which we've never had. So that's going to allow us to run scenarios to better plan our IMP or to make sure we're planning correctly to get the most bang out of the buck to get this PCI moving even more forward. So that software is going to allow us with the new data to analyze the IMP going forward. So, like I said, we can move this PCI up as efficient as possible.
Do you have an idea of when those updated numbers will be?
So we
you
plan
see-
on coming to council, and I'll show the slide here in a little bit. Usually the IMP is updated during budget. So right now, there's an IMP online, which is 22 through 26. But 22 and 23 are the ones that are quote unquote set in stone. 24 through 26 are planning years. So this year we would bring 23 through 27. Bringing those into, we want to wait for the most up-to-date data to bring that updated IMP plan to you. So we're looking, first quarter next year.
Okay, and then on Vision Zero, I know at one time the department was testing a mobile app that would allow drivers, it would give drivers an audible notification whenever they were entering into a school zone, and I think there were some other other uses for that app. Are you still investigating that?
Yes, we have been going through testing with the vendor Glance for that software. We tested, I think, 6 months ago, and we found some locations that we still didn't detect, so that's why we haven't released it until it's make sure like all the school zones, because like the app, it will tell you once you have the app on your cell phone and you're driving through a school zone, you're going above, if it's 20-mile school zone, if you're going 30, it's going to tell you you're speeding in the school zone.
Yeah.
So right now, like I said, we just found, I think, 5 locations that we still needed to fix. So I think we're working on that to make sure, but we'll eventually, I will say, beginning of next year in January, we should be putting that out there.
And then continuing with Vision Zero, I know that we've made improvements to some of our stop signs to add LED flashing lights to those stop signs. Is that, do we have that capability to add those LEDs on a time system to our school zone signs? That would just allow another opportunity for the drivers to be notified whenever they do enter that area?
So on the flashers or on just the static ones we have right now? What do you?
I
the
think it's
LED?
around the school zone sign, right? LED
Yes.
lights around the school zone sign.
Okay.
So we purchased, as part of this year, we purchased 43 LED signs. I think 8 are different from the stop sign configuration. So 2 of them are school zones. So we're planning on doing one pilot project for a city for one school zone first. But we do have in a school zone flasher with LED lights in stock that we just received a month ago. So we were planning to do one pilot school zone because we have to connect that LED lights to the school zone beacons and make sure that works with the clock that basically sends the signal to the whole system.
I really think that should be the standard moving forward. And then one last thing, Peter, we completed the Revive the Drive project. One thing that we didn't make any improvements on, though, is the bike lanes there on Ocean Drive. We know that it's an area that's highly utilized by not just cyclists, but also pedestrians and runners. And we do have a history there of those people sustaining injuries or even dying because they've gotten hit by a vehicle. So, Peter, is there a way, can you take a look at the budget to see if there's a way that we can make some sort of improvements there to help protect the cyclists and pedestrians on that area?
Yes, sir. So you're talking about protected bike lanes, Councilman?
Yeah.
Because we did when we did the mill and overlay, unlike in the 80s, we did the entire street, including the bike lanes. We know that the street hadn't been reconstructed in 50 years, but in the 80s, they did do an overlay, but they did not do the bike lane. So in this project, we did improve the bike lanes as well. They're not protected, but we can look into that to see what that means.
Can you take a look at the budget here and come back with a recommendation? And maybe it's not this budget, but maybe it's
Yeah, it's probably going to take a little longer term because we have issues with parking.
Yeah.
We have to look at, that may be a step one. I noticed last night coming back from the District 5 meeting, several events that were taking place at some of the mansions there. And for the second day in a row, a lot of the bike lane was clogged up. In fact, a biker I saw had to get into the lane because the bike lanes, parked in. So some cities do no parking in bike lanes and enforce that with tickets.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that here. So our bike lanes is something we have to focus on. We don't really have a bike lane. We don't have a bike master plan. We don't have a strategy yet. Again, we're taking incremental steps to improve decades of neglect. So, but that's something we can look at. I would recommend that we develop some type of a bike lane, bike master plan. We do have some bike lanes. We have bike lanes on our sidewalks. We have designated bike lanes, but not protected. We don't have good signage for bike lanes. So I would recommend that. So we'll come as part of the, give us a little bit of time, is when we come back with the final amendments, we'll come up with something for the city and the cyclists. We know that last night again, one of the two cyclists were there talking about we would like to see protected bike lanes. We also have some off-road systems that we don't have a good map for, I don't think. And so, I think we're lacking generally a bike lane program. I know in San Antonio, when I was there for 22 years, they had a real robust master plan. There was a progression of what would be done year after year after year to have connectivity, to have bike lanes, period, and then to have some that were protected.
I know that we've had one citizen that's been really diligent about advocating for bike lanes, but we have a history of injuries and fatalities on our bike lanes there on Ocean Drive. So I would appreciate if you would look into that.
Okay, we'll look
Thank
into
you.
that for you. Yes, sir.
Mayor, I want to kind of go on that because that did come up during the budget meeting in District 5 at Veterans last night. And, Yorktown has two segments the segment from Everhart all the way to Broadfield has bike lanes. However, there's not a whole lot of signage to that point. And in terms of the advocacy for protected bike lanes, I think there's some low-cost options. Like, for example, the rumple strips that you would have like along the interstate where it informs a driver that they're going into the bike lane would probably be a low-cost option to do that. And I asked Gabriel to take a look in and see what that could be. I think you had mentioned that TxDOT uses a certain speed.
When you're talking about protected bike lanes, they recommend protected bike lanes when the speeds usually reach 45 miles an hour or a certain trip count. So we'll be looking into
Well, I mean, and I was thinking in terms of not necessarily having a solid barrier, but having something to inform the driver that they're going into the bike lane. So that I think that would probably be a good solution on Ocean Drive as well because sometimes the drivers don't know they're in the bike lane. Now, I don't know about the parking issue. That's, when you have homes in front of it,
I mean, that happens. You have maintenance
I don't know
people.
about that one.
I don't know about that one, but
But Mayor, I think, and if I can, Councilman, we really need to just look at the whole thing holistically.
Right.
What is the best practice and where? And like you're saying, there could be areas that don't necessarily, I've seen, they're beautiful in San Antonio. The ones that are actually separated by their own, like the little
Right.
medians, but I'm sure that costs a
I
fortune.
mean, across the country, there's various designs. We looked
Right.
at them in San Antonio. There's lower cost, there's upper end
Right.
cost. But I would recommend again that we don't have any strategy for bike
Right.
lanes. I'm a cyclist myself,
Right.
and there's no strategy. So I think we need to come up with a strategy, a plan, a master plan,
That's what I'm
an
saying.
inventory of what do we have,
Right.
and then some type of an incremental approach. We can't do everything in 1 year.
No, that's what I'm saying. The discussion, The discussion has begun, and so let's,
Yeah.
you guys go do your homework.
Right.
Today's not necessarily about it, although
Yes.
it is a concern, as is so many other things, but that is definitely one we have to look at holistically.
Right.
Because it is another huge investment.
Yes.
Which is fine if that's the will of the
Right.
council, but I think we need to work on, a strategy
I
on
agree.
how that would look and
we'll,
where.
we'll bring that
And
forward.
low-cost options.
Low-cost options.
One other
of
thing
course.
too is that it's not just recreation. People use their bicycles to get to work, to get to school. It's a mode of transportation. So in our Vision Zero, or when we talk about multimodal transportation, it's not just a vehicle anymore to get to a destination. People use bicycles. And so having that network is important. So as a city to have a quality of life and retain young individuals there, that's something we need to
Right.
look at. So that strategy or master plan that we'll have
Right.
will help us do that.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilman Smith?
Well, the MPO did a strategy. It's sitting there someplace. It's just digging it out. It was done about 2015, 2016, and it addressed all the issues we're talking about right now. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already sitting out there with it. And some of Councilman Hernandez's, it was in there both off and on street with it. It talked about Ocean Drive, how they took the bike paths off of some of the main arterials to get them out on there. It was done by a biking advocate with it, done at the time. So it's there. The plan is sitting there. We definitely need to dust it off and look at what we're doing right now. Jeff, you're sitting back there. Maybe you can enlighten us or at a different time.
Okay, well, look, given
So
that it's
yes,
right.
there is a master plan sitting out there
Okay.
fairly recently, and in my opinion, I thought it was pretty well done with it. But I'm sitting here. Here's some pictures of some lousy streets on it, and I am just flooded with concerns about our residential streets.
Right.
With it. So as we're talking about this, that we got to keep everything in context. Okay, we're going to spend $20 million a year in protected bike lanes, and where's the money going to come from? And it's going to be coming out of our streets budgets. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As Councilman Hernandez just said, low cost on there with it. So thanks.
Okay, that's all the questions, Gabe.
Okay. So, Councilman, getting to your residential streets. So this is looking at last year's programs and then this year's programs. So you see last year with our in-house operations and on RSRP, we programmed a little over 22 million. This year we're programming just a little over 29 million for residential streets. So it's a $6.9 million increase that we're focusing to those residential streets that you were just speaking of. Peter just gave the IMP update, so this is just a snapshot of today where we're sitting on our IMP program. So you'll see all the pending start, the in-design projects, the scheduled projects, the projects in construction, and then the ones completed. So these are all of our 4 programs from in-house to RSRP, SPMP, and concrete. Excuse me, this is Councilman Molina, what I was talking about earlier, the IMP planning, which usually comes and gets adopted with budget. So this year, with also the district realignments and with the updated PCI, so I think we need to re-examine the 24 through the 26, because some streets that may have been in one district, are now in another district. So using our proportionality that we use, so not only looking at the PCI, but also looking at the redistricting maps to come with a new IMP plan for the, which will be 23 through 27. So getting into some of our improvements. So like I spoke earlier, the Type B funding. So Type B funding this year this is the first year of a 2-year program. The total for this program will be a little over $4 million. So it'll be located in District 5. So these are the industrial streets just east of Bill Witt Park. So we'll be concentrating on Bay Drive, Doberman, and Pyrenees with this project. So it'll be full depth reconstruction, utilities, drainage, the full gamut with this project. Yes, sir. Excuse me?
Can you,
It's about that, about 3.5 to 4 million. So this takes the money from 2023, puts it into this project. As part of this project as well, we're gonna check the ownership of the rest of the roads. There's some discussion that maybe some of the private businesses own that right of way. We're hearing differently right now, but that'll be part of it too, to eventually finish out the entire industrial park. One of the worst roads in town, Councilman Hernandez can attest.
Yeah, some of those are private roads. This was the old Rod Field base or field portion of it, which also included Bill Witt used to be a whole part of that thing. You can actually, if you go on Bill Witt, you can actually see some of the tie downs in the parking lots out there. But there used to be an old hangar out there. I mean, it was well, anyway. So these have been the original streets for that base.
right.
So I mean, it's been ignored. And honestly, it's been a low priority for me because nobody lives there.
Yeah.
So this was a suggestion that I know that for business development through Type B.
Well, okay, Councilman Smith, I have a question on that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious that it's a great thing and roads badly needed, but for example, Omaha Street, we've got a lot of industrial park type of roads. So why was this throughout the city? District 1 has got a lot. I know District 3 has a lot with it way out Weber. So throughout the city, we're concentrating on one. That's a good thing. But where, you know, in the scheme of things, why are we doing this here and not in some of the other areas?
Yeah, this has some of the worst PCI scores, Councilman, and as I'm sure the other streets do.
Well, I drive Omaha.
Yeah, that's what I was
with
going
it.
to say. Is
Yeah.
without even having seen them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
they're
you
just as
cannot
bad.
get through Omaha. I would beg to differ on the PCI.
Okay.
That whole area off of Baldwin is where we have a lot of industrial parks there in terrible shape.
Right.
On the flip
Well,
side of
and-
that, he needs to drive down Bay
Well,
Drive as
hang
well.
on, guys, but we can drive down a whole lot of streets. The whole
Yeah.
point here to Councilman Smith is how did we get to $4 million in this particular park? How many businesses are there here? How many people
Yeah.
are being affected? Where is all that data? I'm sure you have it, but I'd like to see it because, yes,
Okay.
I know there are a lot of
We'll get the data.
areas. And then last time I had looked into this or inquired, there was an issue with these streets being, you know, maybe not completely ours and such,
Right.
or because of the Navy or the military.
Well, that's what I was referencing. So these streets that we're recommending as part of this initiative, they are city-owned streets.
So
We
what
own-
happens to the other ones?
That's part of this project, is to see who owns the other ones. We had $100,000 to do survey work and site.
But wouldn't we do that before, Peter?
No, so these streets that we're recommending, we know we own.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
we're gonna fix 3 streets. I'm being hypothetical, and I'm not
Yeah.
against it. I'm for all
Yeah.
streets, but I do agree with Councilman Smith. How are we holistically looking?
Okay, Jeff, well, okay, Jeff has some information on the streets.
How
but-
are we holistically looking at all the, quote, areas such as this throughout the city? Because I'd
Right.
like to know how many there are. How many businesses are there in this particular park? And if that is the plan, which means we're only going to fix streets that are ours and then do the study for the others and then go look for the money for whatever and whenever that happens. I mean, I don't know. I don't see a direct plan on how this would impact, $4 million would impact this versus maybe another park that completely is our streets and then we
Okay.
could fix. Again, not against fixing
Right.
any street in this city, good Lord, on the record. It is a great project, but I do see the point in what Councilman Smith mentioned. Mr. Edmonds?
I was here to speak on the question about right-of-way. Was there a question, do we have the right-of-way to do this?
Well, there's a couple of questions, and one is that. So Peter just said, you know, we do and we don't.
The answer to that is, yeah, we do. Now, they tried to create a public improvement district out there like 20 years ago, and as part of the process, they platted the property, but not all of the street right-of-way is dedicated, and you've got encroachments, and in those places, they recorded what they call the street reservation. So our research on that indicates that we do have the ability to go out there and make improvements on those roads. We have the right to do it, but in some of those, it doesn't fit our normal criteria for right-of-way width. And so we just have the actual width of the street and a reservation.
Okay, so the short answer is,
We can do it. We have the right to do it,
well,
yes.
the ones, yes, but not the whole thing. Or yes, all of them, whatever.
Any of them we want to do, we can do.
We'll
Go
get,
ahead,
we,
Fred.
we're not being 100% clear. What we can say is this, is that on this map that's on the screen, the red streets that we're recommending to be done, those we have the right to do it.
Right.
We own the street. There's some question, as Jeff said, this property dates back to the 40s and 50s, or even, maybe even before. And so we thought that would be prudent to assess the others and see what is the title ownership. One other thing to note is that already one street has been done in the past in this industrial district by city funds, by the Type B funds. So it was one of those efforts to continue and finish out eventually and then move to other areas. So one street has been done already back in probably about 5 years ago. Councilman?
Actually, it was done for Majak boats. It was the street called Saluki, and it's the only street that was redone. It was done by Type B, and so or Type A. I'm sorry, it was Type A at the time. And so, but it's the only road. I mean, it's a really nice road in front of the Majak boats, and that's it. Mayak.
Yeah.
I'm not. After I left the Navy, I gave up going on the water.
And
I'll
Peter,
just
how
state
many-
that.
How many businesses do we have
There's
in
quite a
this
few,
one?
but we'll get you the inventory. I don't want to make up a number here and have it wrong.
I would get the inventory of
Yeah.
all of it and the inventory of what's, these particular streets that we're actually doing.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
do that.
Councilman Barrera.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I just want to reiterate, having a system, because I think it's important. I mean, I know out there and way out at Weber, there's Bratton, Apollo, Saturn, Cram. I mean, Gabe's been out there. We were talking about Priscina the other day where we helped some people out there. So that's one, I know a couple of years ago, we were working on the streets off of Flato Road, which has been a test in patience because of the fact that we were trying to do it with the budget that we had. We redid the curbs and anyway, so I think that's the thing. It's just so long as there's a system instead of this whack-a-mole system that we have where we're doing it based on pressure that we get. And that way we have an explanation. I know particularly, I've been going to this body shop on Saturn since my dad was working at a bank. And he's been gone for 21 years. And, every time I go over there now, they know I'm a councilman. Man, yeah, look at this. And then there was a water main break over there. There's water all over the place. Because we've just, to be able to, at one point or another, this body shop couldn't, they couldn't get the cars through because the gaps were so big. And so we filled in the curb. And so now when there's water, it's all over the place. And I mean, they're patient, but we got to have some holistic method. So, and I know it's harder because those aren't voters. That's the way we look at it. Nobody lives out there, and so we're like, okay, how do we get out there? And we don't know where they live. So just be conscientious. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree with that, and I have some friends on way out Weber that have businesses over there, and I agree that those need to do that. So I guess that probably should be a plan for Type B funding over a few years, similar to how we have our IMP. There should be an IMP for industrial areas through the Type B funding, or whatever we got there. So now the reason, I actually took Peter and I took people from Public Works to look at these locations. If you have those industrial areas like Omaha or way out Weber or Saturn or those areas, and I know where those are. It's right across Weber from District 5, right? So it's important to have to take a look at those things and really show what needs to be done. What's the main traffic areas where most people drive through? I think way out Weber would be one that needs to be done. But yeah, but compared to way out Weber, I'd rather have way out Weber than Bay Drive. I mean, Bay Drive is like a war zone. potholes wise. I mean, the whole street is potholes. So I mean, I get it. It's just kind of prioritizing that and creating an IMP through type B. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, Gabriel, we have obviously a number of industrial parks across the city. I get calls, and I'm sure Councilman Lerman does too, about Sunbelt Industrial Park. I mean, the roads in that industrial park are, it looks like a war zone. They're so bad. And we've sent, you guys have responded out there several times fixing potholes. But the thing we need to look at when we're looking at these projects around these industrial parks is, if we go back in, my opinion, if we go back in there and many of those with asphalt, we're gonna be facing this problem again. Most of those are in that condition because they service large trucks, 18-wheelers, heavy cargo loads on a daily basis. And they are absolute, I think, and maybe Jeff will argue with me on this wherever he went. Many of these, I think, should have concrete streets that are built for that kind of traffic. Because if you don't, you're just kind of pouring a short-term solution onto the problem.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Councilman. In fact, I believe, but Hernandez just left, but the street that was done already in that industrial park was in concrete, so that's a good idea. I mean,
but this Bay Drive, I've had several calls about that too, and I drove out there one day to meet one of the business owners, and it was a mess. And somebody had pulled a travel trailer out there. He said it had been sitting on the side of the road there on Bay Drive for a year. Then they just abandoned it and left it there. And so I got CCPD to come over and pick that thing up and haul it off. But these are really bad. But we have a number of these industrial parks. So maybe when we look at this, we can look at them across the city, do a PCI index on all of them, see where we need to start. They're all bad in some form or fashion.
Yes, right.
And then figure out a way we're going to fix them, but fix them to where they will support the traffic that they have on a daily basis.
Okay, good strategy. Good strategy recommendation. Thank you.
No more questions, Gabe.
All right, thank you. So next is an overview of a 10-year scheduled program, improvement program for Ocean Drive. So this is the full stretch from Ennis Jocelyn all the way to the American Bank Center around Power Street. So you'll see that the 10-year program, if we want to keep Ocean Drive looking like it is today, this is kind of the program that's needed. You'll see the asterisk there on FY23. So funding's been identified for FY23. We would need to identify funding going on further on this 10-year program. So this is, nothing different from any street that we put down that needs a maintenance plan. So from crack sealing to an ultra thin to, a mill and overlay. So this is kind of where each one of those segments falls into that maintenance program, and then the funds needed for those operations. Next is the Ocean Drive Median Improvement Program. So this will be a 10-year program at $100,000 per year. So right now, from the stretch from Ennis Jocelyn to Louisiana, there's 100 medians, all different shapes, sizes, lengths, different landscaping. So with this first year, we want to get a landscape architect involved, get a master plan for these 100 medians, with part of that 100,000, and then start doing some improvements also. So that's our first year, is to kind of get the plan, bring it to council, and then start working on improving those 100 medians in that area.
That's great. It's going to really beautify them.
So next, this is one of our major improvements that we're going to be coming with this fiscal year. So right-of-way, like I mentioned, we have over 2,900 lane miles of roadway that Public Works is kind of the enforcer of. Right now, we have one person that's dedicated to right-of-way permitting, any work within our right-of-way. If a third-party contractor wants to close a sidewalk, close a lane, do some work, underground, above ground. We have currently one person within Public Works that takes care of this. So here you'll see the column on the left is the current fee, and then the column on the right is the proposed fee. So of course, we've benchmarked the top 7 cities, so we believe these fees fit right within the benchmarking of those top 7 cities. And then you'll see the expected revenue on the right column that would be generated from those fees. So what are those fees going to get us?
Mayor, can I just,
Yes.
Councilman, yes.
you know, I always get, I've been getting frustrated, and it's not exclusive to us. We just compare, we benchmark ourselves based on what the other cities are doing, And I know we're not in here to make a profit. We obviously have different sources of revenue to do things. And we have to look at it from the economy. But as somebody in the private sector, we charge fees based on what our cost is, And so then I don't know if there's, and then once again, this is just a long-term thing. If you look at it holistically, pragmatically, I have a saying to small business owners on occasion, they go into my business, I said, you can't lose money on every project and make it up in volume, And so a lot of times what happens is we come up with these fees just based on the other 7, and that doesn't have any real methodology into it until we get into the middle, So I just, and I'm sorry just to be picking on you, Gabe, because it happens in every department. But Peter, I don't know if there's something you reach out to your colleagues, because 7 people could be doing it wrong, So anyway, my
Right, Councilman. So we don't just look at the 7 and say, that's it, we're going to pick that number. We look at other things as well to include our economy, the fact that if we didn't have a fee, we don't go to the max. We gradually get there one day. What Gabriel's going to show you there on the next slide, though, is the revenues that we collect to manage the right-of-way is not enough to cover the expenses. So already we're less than the business model of you cover your expenses with the revenue. So we're about 80%, we're about 60, 70% or so, just eyeballing it. Maybe even less, but
So I guess when I say benchmarking is, we know what we need in the city, just like when Stormwater fee, we developed our plan for what our needs are. So we develop this right away for what our needs are, and then look to see, are we within, a range of, what other people, we don't want to, charge $1,000 everybody, well, why are they only charging 100? Are we not looking at something? But we look at a program for our needs and then benchmark and see if we're within that range. So like Peter was saying on this slide, you'll see with the addition of the 4 positions, so 5 total within that management team, you'll see the revenue collections are about 350 with budgeted expenses at 658. So some of those are one-time capital purchases, vehicles, laptops, right-of-way management program. So you'll see the net fiscal impact is still of impact to us, but we first look at our needs and then look, to make sure we're within range of the other top cities. But our first thought is, okay, what do we need, and then we benchmark.
And that's very good, but I think, and I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm just saying that, if it's a capitalized expenditure where it's something that's, then that needs to be differentiated. But if, whatever it costs to be able to maintain it on a regular basis, I just think that that's a practice. And I applaud you for doing that. I appreciate it. And you did a great job with regard to stormwater. You really did. It was a difficult thing, and this council couldn't have done it without the effort that you and your team put in. So anyway, I'm sorry. Thank you much.
No, and, just in why we need this. So we did a pilot study. So, we have techs that are roaming the city. We said, go ahead and stop at these contractors and ask, do you have a permit? Over 50% of the time, these contractors had no permit to be working in our right-of-way. So they're doing lane closures, they're doing sidewalk closures. These things take proper distancing on your tapers. It's a safety hazard when it comes to that. So, bringing this in, we'll be able to have, boots on the ground patrolling our right-of-ways to make sure all the traffic safety or traffic control plans are in place. They're in place properly. Right. Just increasing safety for the public.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's about protecting the right-of-way. So as we improve our network of streets, we need to protect that investment. And there's been numerous cases where contractors, telecommunication contractors specifically, have not only blocked streets, but have cut brand-new pavement on airlines specifically. Is a good example. Massive cuts in a brand-new laid street that cost taxpayer money. So we don't have a right-of-way management program, period. This helps to begin to get us one so that we can protect the taxpayer's investment. That's what this is about. It's not about issuing fees or fines, but it's rather about protecting taxpayer investment in our roads and sidewalks. Another case on Airline by the Reagan Brown Shopping Center, brand new sidewalks. We had a contractor come in and started jackhammering them up with no permit. And they didn't do a good job, so we had to have them redo it. But cities that have right-of-way have a protection mechanism called right-of-way management.
Yeah.
So that's what this recommendation is. So we thank Gabriel for bringing it
Right.
forward, for doing some piloting and doing some analysis to develop a
Good.
program.
Great. Councilman Pusley?
So if a contractor goes out and does that, is there any financial charge to them, like a citation?
Yeah, a fee, right, if they're, well, number one, if they're in our right-of-way cutting up a brand-new street, a brand-new sidewalk like that's happened in the last 6 months, one, we make sure they restore it appropriately, but two, we fine them.
Good.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing it. It's companies that have a lot of money, telecommunications companies without naming them. And it's not the right thing.
Well,
Yeah.
this company that's running around town now, putting all the fiber in for AT&T.
Right.
That's the kind of company they are.
Exactly.
They don't ask your permission, they don't get permits, they
Right.
just go do the work, and,
That's
you know,
exactly what happened on,
they went across a piece of property of mine with all kinds of heavy equipment, damaged the property,
Yeah.
dug it up, never once asked my permission.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I think it's at Airline, the first example,
So-
but it was actually Nile,
Yeah,
a brand new street. The concrete, the asphalt hadn't really even dried yet, and there were two massive holes right in the middle of the road. Massive.
maybe the council needs to revisit the level of those fines.
Well, in this budget, we're recommending
So,
increases on all of them.
the current fine is $500 for a violation fee, so we're looking to move that up to $1,500.
Good.
I would think something more along the lines of $5,000 would be.
It is per
that gets their
day, so
attention.
It's
Oh,
per
it's per
day.
day. It's per day.
I mean, $500, they'll pay that and laugh and go on about
15.
their work. But you have to make it to where it's painful.
They said
Okay.
15 though.
Pardon?
1,500 a day. Well, painful is relative.
I mean, if they cut the road, you're gonna find them one
500
day.
hurts me.
Yeah, and then they'll be charged the street cut fee, so they'll have to pay the street cut ordinance, which sets a fee if you want to cut a certain area of street. So you're paying you're degrading the street, so you're going to pay a fee for that also.
Yeah, if we just rebuilt Airline and they went out and cut a hole across it without our permission, they ought to be in court.
Right. I'm sorry, it was actually Nile. I used the wrong street, but not only was it was Nile, but not only was it one cut, it was two massive cuts. I mean, we have pictures, so, no permit, didn't even ask anybody. And it wasn't like a little hole, it was in the middle, and it covered the whole lane. So it was almost the entire street. I'm like, I was driving it myself. I'm the one that said, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
Brand new street.
Okay.
And so
Well, I think we need to revisit that and how that's completely handled. If you can get fined $500 for having your sprinkler system on, cutting a road or cutting a sidewalk ought to be exponentially higher than that.
okay, we'll look into it for the change.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, it's about protecting taxpayer investment. This is not about being mean to any telecommunications company. This is about protecting taxpayer money.
Okay, Councilman Hernandez?
I'm sorry, that was from a previous one, but I did want to mention,
Okay,
I
never
did get.
mind then. Never mind then.
But I did get, actually, Gabriel, I'm going to send you a PDF that I got from Valerie Gray 3 years ago on this industrial park, so you can see which ones were the private roads and which ones were the ones, because this work. I've been going back to this since I first got here, so just wanted to kind of bring that
Okay.
in.
Thank you. All right, Gabe, you're good.
All right.
Yes,
So one of our next improvements is our battery backup system. So out of 252 signalized intersections, 156 are eligible for this battery backup system. This was very evident during the freeze. A lot of our signals went out. So, this battery backup system allows to supply emergency power to these traffic signals, even if local power fails. So allowing them to at least blink red until power is restored. Up to this year, we've installed 108 of these systems citywide. This year, we're planning on doing 24 more of those intersections, and then another 24 to complete that 3-year program. So Vision Zero. Vision Zero is something very important to us too. So we have reoccurring funds available of 900,000. So, the flashing LED signs, the flashing now school zone signs that we can start doing any of those improvements. And also one of the big achievements, like I mentioned earlier, was the block grant, the set aside block grant from the CCMPO. So this is a total program of around 6.3 million, with the MPO award of 6.5 and the city's cost of 2.7. So the 2.7 plus the 9 is what you see in the green, the 3.6. That that set aside block grant is a 5-year program. So you'll see the 5 pedestrian mobility and safety projects listed there. So these projects will be done from FY23 through 26.
I'm sorry, Gabe, can we just highlight, because for the persons that have been to our community meetings probably aren't listening, but there's 2 projects in the bottom box there. So Mary Carroll hike and bike hike and bike trail improvements, and then Brook Road hike and bike trail improvements. So these are 2 good off-road transportation improvements for biking or walking. And that's the most safe, is getting off the road entirely. And then on Ocean Drive, there's a pedestrian crossing that was also brought up in our community meetings, where people said you can't cross Ocean Drive. This is a second pedestrian crossing. We know the first one's downtown by Twig Street. And then there's improvements in our District 1, Leopard Street, and then Encantada also has pedestrian safety. So this is a significant investment of $6 million, 2.7 from the city, 3.5 from the MPO, to provide safe projects across every district in the city.
So our traffic infrastructure improvements for this coming fiscal year. So like we talked about earlier, the median and intersection improvements there at Airline and Ocean. And like Peter mentioned, you see the antiquated signals that are running on span wires right now at that intersection. Continuing the traffic improvements for the new Mary Carroll. So the left turn, U-turn, which we call a loon, there at Masterson. So the 380 allows, because right now when you come out of the new Carroll High School onto Castores, you're a forced right. So when you come down to Masterson, this will allow us to traffic to make the U-turn to get back to Saratoga if you come out of that entrance. A 210,000 for the Staples hot traffic signal improvements there at Berry Street, and also 100,000 in emergency traffic maintenance for citywide signals. Next is Leopard Street improvements. So right now, we're programming 500,000 towards the preliminary engineering study. So this is a one-time funding for a study recommending the street maintenance and reconstruction needs of the project right away. So right now, the project area for this is going to be Leopard Street from Lantana to Toloso. Also, Leopard Street median beautification. So this is adding funding to replace dead vegetation with grand oaks or ornamental trees within the medians. So this project area is from Leopard, from Violet to Mackenzie.
Yes, sir. No, on this one, this isn't important for 2 of our council, probably the entire council, but 2 in particular. But so planting something that's easy to maintain, a hardy oak tree, and this is in the area of the more commercial area by the grocery store, HEB, and taking you from, I guess, I don't know if that's Violet or Mackenzie, but that stretch would be section number 1 to address, with some nice shade trees that are native. And then with respect to Leopard Street, we're in the process of trying to determine ownership of that street. Councilman Smith brought to my attention that we may not own it. It's maybe TxDOT still, so we're meeting with them. We do have an agreement that goes back to the 60s, where it seems to be there's some discussion in that agreement about who's supposed to do what. So we're meeting with TxDOT soon to go over that document to make sure that we're not sure who's supposed to maintain the road, frankly.
Right.
Right. Right. TxDOT believes one thing, we believe something else after reading the document.
Well, and to add to that, we were about to invest in the
Well,
street.
there's a project that we're doing right now that the taxpayers are funding, and
Right.
we had a $7 million phase 2 that I put on hold until we can find out who's supposed to do this.
Right.
I mean, it's no secret, the agreement, if we looked at it right now, it says TxDOT's supposed to maintain the surface and the subsurface of the road. We're supposed to maintain the striping, the signage, and the landscaping. TxDOT owns the road. We don't own it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have the agreement. Neiman and I are meeting, is it today? It was yesterday. We missed it. So it's going to be this week. The budget held us up. So we're rescheduling it, but with Miles to thoroughly review it because we want to make sure that we understand this.
Right.
Councilman Smith was,
Yes,
you know,
thank you,
yeah.
Councilman Smith. Okay, Councilman Hernandez.
On the beautification, is this gonna, I mean, I guess the concern here is, water usage and the drought. Is there any way we could do some sort of xeriscaping towards no water usage? Or is that in the thought process?
We could certainly look into that.
yeah, we thought some type of shade. There is a lot of pedestrians that use that area.
Maybe a cactus? Maybe some cactus?
No palm trees, no cactus.
We want some shade out
Well,
there.
no palm trees, but I
need
mean,
some
just
shade.
some xeriscaping to where you're not having to water it, because I mean, it's gonna be hard to justify, us watering medians and having
Yeah.
drought restrictions.
Yeah, Councilman, we're looking at a program to use effluent to water medians across the city, so this could be a target area for that. The wastewater treatment
That'll
plant's
work.
not too far.
We won't
That'll
see it.
work. I mean, I just want to make sure we don't have egg on our face when we're,
Yeah,
you know-
we can't fill pools either.
well, that's recycled.
We can save a lot of money on the Bill Witt pool.
Hey, you guys went after my industrial park streets, man. Come on.
Yeah, okay. Councilman Pusley.
Yeah, this is great. It's something, and I hope we get to the bottom of the deal between whether it's us or TxDOT. I've read some documents where it seems to me to be a little iffy. It seems like there was some sort of horse trade made back when we did the Interstate 37.
There was, but the document that I saw, that was, it was an amendment to the original document. They did a great job writing it because they defined what maintenance meant, and they defined who was supposed to take care of the surface and the subsurface. It's very clear.
Yeah.
So it behooves me why people.
Well, that'd be great, because from Lantana all the way to at least, what, Billy?
Right, just Leopard.
Toulouse, well, I'd say all the way to nearly Violet.
Yeah.
That road is in bad condition.
It is. I've driven it myself, and Councilman Lerma took me up there. We spent the morning, several hours just driving Leopard. That was it.
And the section between Corn Products and Rand Morgan is an industrial corridor.
Yeah.
And all that's there are companies that depend on heavy traffic all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but the beautification deal, I've got some videos I'll share with you. When my dad was in Spahn Hospital, I'd go to the big, I'd push him down to the big glass wall overlooking the bay, and I would take pictures of about 15 city crew trucks taking care of the landscaping along Ocean Drive. And there is a place we could look at possibly reducing the amount of landscaping we're having to take care of, but we desperately have for years talked about or needed to have additional landscaping along that Leopard corridor, and not only that, but sidewalks and curbs and other things too as well. So thank you very much. This is a good program.
Right. So
no palm trees.
No palm trees at all.
No palm trees.
Hardy oaks. But just one final note: depending on what the outcome is of the legal document review, the section of Leopard from Lantana to Toloso, if we were to improve that, the early estimates are it would be $100 million. So what we said is, if we're supposed to do it based on the documents, and let's start by assessing some early design, but how do we phase it? What's the appropriate phase? Do underground utilities have to be replaced? Do we still need the separated roadway with 2 lanes and the median in the middle? So this is that would be the whole bond program for, if we did just that section. So we know we have to address it. It's, as Councilman Lerner and I drove it recently, we said, God, this is bad. You know it, So that's what that improvement is there for 500,000.
Councilman Hunter? Councilman Hernandez? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now would be a good time to approach TxDOT about this, considering our meeting yesterday.
Yep.
And how much all we did was make up and hug with them the whole time we were giving the meeting. I understand the mayor had to be the mediator since we're using our position, but we should have ripped them. I mean, what's going on there is ridiculous. And what people aren't thinking about is that every year our current harbor bridge is up, we're paying maintenance dollars to keep that damn thing up there. And this other one should have already been built by now. So we are not getting the proportional amount of funds that our city deserves for our streets and roads. So we need to be going after them. Now, after watching my father speak yesterday, I'm glad I didn't, because I probably would have gotten a little bit too hyped up. Probably would have said something incorrectly or wrong. But I think this is a good time to approach TxDOT, not just on this project, which I think is a great project, thank you, and a lot of other projects.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are not getting our fair share, not even close, and we won't be. Because all that money is being tied up at this, keeping this bridge from falling up, the current one falling apart. So.
Yeah, I agree, Councilman. We're definitely utilizing this time. I can tell you that. Councilman Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. Another TxDOT issue. So Saratoga, somebody brought up at my budget meeting, or the District 3 budget meeting, I shouldn't say mine. They brought up the point about the medians in Saratoga. I guess, was I correct in my statement when I said that that's a TxDOT deal?
Correct, that's a TxDOT deal to improve, but actually we mow the medians. We're responsible for mowing them, so any grass that's within Saratoga right-of-way is our maintenance, but if we wanted to improve those medians, we'd have to get permission from TxDOT, or TxDOT would have to do the improvements.
All right, well, keep that in mind. I mean, it would be nice. I mean, also, if it's Zero Escape or something like that, I can't imagine that it would be, we're maintaining them already, so I can't imagine that it would be overly expensive to be able to put something along that stretch, particularly from Weber to Staples.
Yes, sir.
So, not for this budget, but for the next time around. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Lerma.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I definitely want to thank Peter for spending that morning with me. We did drive, specifically Leopard, all the way down to Violet. We spent, and he found out that you need basically a 4x4 to be able to travel Leopard Street, especially in the industrial area. That street's been like that for 30 years, 40 years, I don't know. Mike, you can probably know that, just as well. It's been like that for a long time. But not only Leopard Street, though, Rand Morgan's another street that we drove because of the growth that we're having there, the residential growth. And I'm finding out that I guess TxDOT owns that one too. And we need sidewalks all the way to 37 from McNorton Street. We need to do the utilities, underground utilities, but once again, it's TxDOT. So I agree with Councilman Hunter. I think this is the time for us to approach TxDOT and not ask. We need to start demanding things from them. I think that's the important thing. I mean, we've always been buddies with everybody. I think it's time that we start stepping on people's toes and not our toes be stepped on. We're the city, we're the council here, and it's time to move forward and hold those accountable that need to be held accountable. I think that's important, but thank you for the beautification, and once again, Councilman Hernandez, I'm not giving up my oak trees.
Okay. Gabe, that's all the questions.
All right. So our street personnel improvements. So we're looking to add a survey crew to our growing engineering department. So the SPMP that we do the in-house engineering and also our in-house maintenance crews, we would have to go out for contractual services for these operations. So bringing this in-house is definitely a savings of estimated around, 466,000 in savings if we go ahead and add this crew, and they're an in-house crew. They're available for us to use. Even our stormwater department can use them for, grading ditches, and those issues. So bringing that on board would be a great enhancement to our growing engineering group that we have there at Public Works. So, and also an IMP utility coordination position. So, we were able to get partial funding from utilities, and we also partial fund a new paving crew. And with utilities now, spending over $150 million in new water line improvements, so much more in wastewater improvements. Some of these lines are going to be in the streets, so we need to plan with them accordingly to get these streets repaved if there is work being done within our right-of-way. So another, to Councilman Hernandez's suggestion, we're doing exactly what you want. We want to put a dedicated traffic engineer there at Development Services. So these fees would be associated to any plats, any public improvement plans, any commercial building permits. If you want a driveway on a new commercial site, how's it going to affect traffic holistically, on that street network? So, this is something we're planning to implement, and I think this is something we need. Development Services gets over 2,000 permits, public improvement plans, commercial building plans, residential plans, and for us to, not hold us accountable, but it's our asset, so we want to make sure we're getting what we want as Public Works from these developments. We want to experience growth. With experienced growth comes more development, more traffic. So we just want to make sure that all these new developments are following rules and getting people safe. They don't want to be waiting in line. Schools. We always have issues with schools. They generate traffic. They have a peak traffic, demand about 8 o'clock for elementaries, 9 o'clock for middle schools, high schools. So, planning these holistically and not just looking at, the small picture. So this is the improvement that we're proposing for this year.
Mayor, I'd like to kind of.
Yes, Councilman.
Is this going to replace or how's this going to work? Because a lot of times we would get traffic engineering studies, right? And as part of this. So this is not to replace that, or what can you explain that?
No, this is to fund a traffic engineer at Development Services. So when a certain development triggers a traffic impact analysis, a TIA, or a UTP amendment, because now UTP amendments reside in Public Works to bring to Planning Commission and bring to Council. So those reports will be reviewed by this person there at Development Services. Developers, commercial developers, residential developers will have a person there that they can get answers from immediately when it comes to traffic, because that's one important part when we're doing these developments.
Okay, so they would be reviewing the traffic impact studies.
Yes, sir.
and or whatever, and then that would not come directly to you to go through them. So you'd have a direct line, and they'd have a dotted line to Al Raymond?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm assuming this was also going to be, we're going to formalize the UTP, the Urban Transportation Plan amendments as part of this, and this person will be in charge of that.
Correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So the fees do enhance a one traffic engineer 2, or we're looking at maybe a traffic engineer 3 or 4, depending on the needs. So, right now we have planned for this. So this, like I said, this puts a person, a body there at Development Services, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So they'll be working hand in hand with Development Services with those commercial building permits, plats, public improvements that come into Development Services. So another thing we wanted to do this year is, keep developing our staff. When it comes to street maintenance, when it comes to, paving operations, even, traffic control safety. So we wanted to put some money aside to develop our staff, to make sure they have all the up-to-date training on the operations they're doing.
Good.
So another big lift for this year, so street maintenance fee. You'll see street maintenance fee was adopted in June of 2013 by council, and the fee went into effect in January of 2014. So that ordinance authorized a 10-year automatically sunsetting on January 1st of 2024. So in order to bring this to budget next year for adoption, and then ultimately renewal for those fees to go into January, we have to start working now. So updating the street maintenance fee, Public Works plans on retaining the assistance of a consultant, an experienced consultant, to revise the fee, look at the fee. Of course, we'll have community and stakeholder involvement with the central to the revision process, and you'll see kind of a timeline we've laid out there. It's almost similar to a timeline that we did with stormwater fee. Start getting it, developed, come to council, give updates, and then have it ready for next fiscal year budget in August with an adoption in September, with the new fee going effective of January 24. So that concludes the street portion of Public Works, and we can stand by for questions.
I think you've already got all the questions, Gabe. You really want more? No, that's good. Gabe, thank you very much for the presentation, and we appreciate your team's work. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we'll go on to stormwater then.
Okay, yeah. Move right along.
So next will be the stormwater presentation for Public Works. So what's our stormwater mission? To protect life and property through proper stormwater conveyance, while also protecting water quality in our creeks, bays, rivers, bays, and estuaries. So, Mother Nature reminded us the other day of what happens when it rains here in Corpus. We've been in a drought, might have, slipped our minds, but, the definite reminder of the delicate system we have here. We're a coastal city, we're flat, we have no elevation. Our margin for error when it comes to these systems is very slim. So without proper maintenance of these systems, issues can occur. So, with Public Works, we have over 620 miles of major and minor ditches and channels to maintain. We have over 670 linear miles of underground stormwater pipes to maintain, and also over 20,000 stormwater inlets to maintain. So the organizational chart is the same that you saw earlier, with stormwater being on the right. So you'll see stormwater operations and stormwater management. So you'll see the star there on the inlet cleaning and maintenance. So that's the improvement we are proposing this year. So you'll see 122 positions are within the 282 positions in Public Works. So our achievements for FY22, one of our big achievements was the $4.75 million Planning and Engineering Texas Water Development Board grant that we secured. That's based on $44 million of Oso Creek Channel Bottom and Green Infrastructure project improvements. We're looking for Oso Creek from approximately Greenwood all the way to the Yorktown Bridge. So during that stretch, there's over 40 miles of internal channels that influence that stretch of creek. So we're also going to be looking at improvements on those channels, the major channels that influence within that section with this grant. Achievement 2, we successfully launched the city's first stormwater fee and stormwater fee team. Prior to this, stormwater was always paid out of the water rates. We've created a, transparent, fair and equitable fee now based on the amount of stormwater runoff you actually generate from the property, not how much water you use. So achievement 3, our Bay Water Quality Improvement Project. This is something the mayor's passionate about. So recently here at council, we approved the contract to get that started. So we got 3 sites that we're gonna begin construction on. There's over 48 outlets from our system into the bay, just between Cole Park and the American Bank Center. That's not even including looking at past Cole Park going towards the university. So we're going to tackle some of the big ones first, that we get the majority of the runoff that goes into the bay. So this will be sediment and floatable interceptors, anything from baffle boxes to, it's sort of the shape of a manhole, creates a vortex, spins out the sediment and floatables, and allows the water to continue. Also, the successful implementation of the stormwater channel restoration team. So this was the improvement from last year. This was our first improvement with the stormwater fee. So we've successfully hired the 14 positions for that crew. We're currently waiting on the equipment to come in, but they are currently training with the 2 current crews we have for the major channel maintenance. Also, another big program we have is the street sweeping. We've had 0 street sweeping before. Now, with our in-house and contractual, you'll see our 21 numbers of lane miles that we swept, over 16,000 up to 19,000 this year, and our target next year is a little over 24,500 lane miles of street sweeping. Also, number of acres mowed. Like I said, this is both in-house and contractual. So some of these services resided in parks previously, so we've taken some of those crews in-house. So we have in-house vegetation maintenance. So you can see there the acres of right-of-way and ditch right-of-way that is mowed by that team. Next, you have the linear miles of major stormwater ditches maintained. So that was the achievement and improvement that we proposed last year. So this year, we're still on pace for, having the existing equipment, the existing 2 crews of around 21 to 22 linear miles of major. But as soon as that equipment comes in, we'll be doubling that to 45. So, and you'll see later what kind of cycle that brings to those major ditches as far as operations. Next is the number of environmental. So this is just highlighting another group that's within Public Works or within Stormwater, is our MS4, our, kind of enforcers of our stormwater system. So this is just how many annual inspections they do on environmental and industrial areas performed annually. So Stormwater Fund. So this year we're proposing a budget of $23.3 million for this organization, with the main piece of the pie going to our major channel maintenance, some minor channel maintenance, and vegetation maintenance. Next is your stormwater engineering and support services. Then you have your concrete maintenance, which is curb and gutter. So curb and gutter falls under stormwater for any repairs. Street sweeping, water quality service, flood control management, which is our 2 pump stations that we have downtown, in our inlet cleaning and maintenance group. So this is a 5-year plan. We showed a similar 5-year plan of, where do we want to get to be a efficient, stormwater maintenance program. So this year, we are planning to have an improvement of our inlet cleaning and inspection crew. Currently, we have 2 crews for over 20,000 inlets. This improvement this year would allow us to go to 4 crews. And you'll see on the next page, that takes our cycle. We're getting to 1 inlet maybe every 3.5 years right now. So that would cut that cycle in half to just a little over a year that we would get to those over 20,000 inlets. And then any emergency stormwater infrastructure improvement. So that's that's $500,000 that we'll have towards in-house operations, kind of pay as you go. If things pop up. Good example this year was the golf cart crossings at King's Crossing. We were able to bring that in-house, save money, and install the golf cart crossings in-house. So that was 72-inch RCP pipe, 6 foot tall basically pipe that we were able to do in-house. So this will help us in the future to have monies for those kind of operations.
Gabe, I have to ask you, since
Yes,
you
ma'am.
brought it up, the tires out there,
Yes,
are those a part of?
Yes, they use that when the tracks are on the street, so they don't
Okay.
ruin the street. But we're looking to move them where they're not such an eyesore.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I knew someone had explained something of that nature, but I thought, I can't remember, and I was getting some calls, and I thought, I need to check with y'all. There may be an email for you, I don't know, but thank you. That would be much appreciated. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we can put them, I don't know, somewhere else. Because they look like someone dumped them.
Correct.
They look terrible. Thank you.
Yeah, city did.
Yeah.
And also what we mentioned earlier, so 75,000 for public education and outreach. So part of our MS4 permit, you know, we are required to do community outreach, you know, and education, you know, like Don't Mess with Texas kind of plan that we want to implement, like, you know, have a year-round campaign, not just when it rains, you know,
Right.
have something come out, but, you know, year-round, just to keep people reminded of, you know, keep the grass clippings, trash,
Right.
you know, how it affects our system. It doesn't, you know, it's just not environmental, but it's also, you know, operational. When it rains, it could, you know, cause localized flooding. So that'll be in, that was actually reoccurring from last year. We used it last year when we were actually implementing the fee. So we did TV, radio, mail outs, you know, just to get the word out that we're creating this fee, why we're creating it. So this year we'll transition to more of a outreach of, you know, where are these dollars going? How can you help maintain our system? Then you'll see the next 4 years. So the next big upgrade would be the minor channel maintenance. Like I said, we have over 150 of the major channels, like Master Channel 29, 27. But we also have a lot of the roadside ditches that are within neighborhoods, collectors, that we currently maintain on as an as-needed basis. If they call, if they're having issues, we have we have to pull crews from that major channel maintenance to get to those minor channels. So I think we have over 300 plus miles of those minor channels. So we definitely need improvements within that area to start getting those on a maintenance schedule on the residential and collector ditches.
And, okay, ditches.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it's those ones like on Cimarron? where you've
Yeah,
got-
Cimarron, you know, within your residential neighborhoods, you know, Flower
Sure.
Bluff has a lot.
Right.
Out in the rural, you know, Cal Island, you know, there's even some still in town. So to get to those minor channels, that would be the improvements
Sure.
there on 24 and 25.
Okay, we've got a few questions, Gabe, and I think,
ma'am.
I guess, did our audio go down? Can you check, Ruth? Councilman Hunter?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to applaud y'all, the mayor and whichever council members, all of you, for doing the outflow nets. I don't know what you would call them in the bay.
Yeah.
5 to 6 years ago, we were approached by citizens on examples of Australia, South Africa, Spain, on how these things worked. But staff expressed to us that they were not. I think it's great, and I think y'all did a great job implementing them. What has changed in the process or the technology of these nets that now that they are efficient or effective enough for us to implement them?
So actually, we don't want to get into I'll say the net business, because the maintenance issues with nets that we've read about, you know, these are going to be permanent structures that are in line before it even gets out to the bay. So they'll be, you know, it's almost like a grease trap that you have before, you know, it gets into our sanitary sewer system, like a commercial restaurant. So it'll catch it before it even gets to the bay, and will be easily maintained by our crews. So our crews can just pop manholes, get our Vector trucks, and get all the trash out. So those nets are kind of a maintenance nightmare from what I've read. So we're going to more permanent structures, like there's another, like a vortex manhole, does the same system of like a baffle box. The one at Louisiana, and the one that comes out in Nicole Park, that's almost going to be like a bar screen, because that's kind of the only system that you can really use on that one, since they're big boxes. So it'll be a bar screen with manholes on top, so it'll catch it, and we can, so no nets.
So basically, you just go in there, take it out, and you can just plug it right back in
Correct, sir.
without having to roll it up, and
Yes.
that's pretty neat. That's exciting. Thank you for doing that. That's really neat. Thank y'all. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and we're gonna let everyone know, the baskets, I'll let everyone know when that is, because I think that is a reason to get out there and support the installation of the first one, to show the importance of, this endeavor, which
And
is
the one at
huge.
Waters Edge Park, I think we can even install almost like a viewing box on the top so public can see
Good.
a good educational tool
Yes.
for them to see.
Yeah, great.
Watch the trash flow.
Yeah, a bunch of stripes, caps, and whatever, styrofoam. Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, Gabriel, you have a new organization in your system called Stormwater Administration. Can you kind of explain how that was developed?
So actually, my position when I was Assistant Director of Stormwater was actually still in streets. So we've realigned anything that's within stormwater related. We have a dedicated contracts personnel. We have our stormwater fee management team. You have myself. You have our floodplain manager. So just those positions, we've kind of realigned, into stormwater that may have been in other departments or under other funds.
But you have maintenance and repair in that as well. You have $400,000 programmed in Stormwater Administration for maintenance and repair.
Is that the one we were talking about earlier?
Is that like your little
No.
catch-all in case you
Yeah.
have?
Say your name.
Okay. Hi, Nicole Zapata, the Finance Manager for Public Works. The 400,000 is for the emergency
So that's what he was talking
stormwater.
about, the
Yeah,
King's Crossing kind of thing? Okay, so that's where
Exactly.
you're parking that money? Okay.
Mhm.
You have some concrete maintenance in here as well, where you had larger amounts dedicated last year in the amended budget. You had $734,000, but you only budgeted for 199, and you're budgeting again this year for 199,000. So kind of explain what happened with that concrete maintenance. And this is with stormwater, not streets.
So, and I may defer to you, but, so we started with a certain type of concrete that we were using and this is, we
Oh.
switched over to quality.
Okay, so
Quality mix, yeah,
before we were using a Quickcrete kind of vendor with our operations now that we're doing. We need the assistance of like a Ingram or an Alamo. So we've changed from our business process from one type of concrete to another.
Yeah, so we're switching, so we're ending a contract and starting a kind of overlap, starting another one for the different
Okay,
type of
so
concrete.
how did that equate to, going over budget by $500,000 last?
Because the ready mix is a lot more expensive than the one we were doing before.
Okay, so going forward, you're only budgeting 199,000. Are you gonna need more there? I mean, what's the, I mean, you're only budgeting what you had from last year and you went over considerably.
So we'll look into that, but as far as our in-house, it's mainly used by our in-house concrete crews. So I'll get with that operation and just make sure.
Okay, I
that
just wanna make
number's
sure
right.
you're budgeting accurately, because the amended budget was so out of whack from what you originally budgeted, and then you're going back to that original budget.
Yes, sir. We'll look at that.
Okay. And lastly, I wanted to kind of, since we're doing a lot of these curbs and gutters, I mean, a lot of the old neighborhoods have the rollover curbs, right? Are we moving away from that, or is that?
We've been approached so right now our standard is a 6-inch curb. We're gonna be looking into, we've been approached if we can do, a 4-inch curb that's allowed to, allow traffic to go over where you don't really have to demo it to build a driveway. I guess that's been brought to our attention is why they would want to use that. But also that, I want to bring to your attention, that 6-inch curb, since we are flat down here, when we get these big storms, our curbs hold water. They're detention ponds, basically, when we get these big, large storms. So some of our design criteria you know, a 25-year storm must be contained within the top of the curb and gutter. So we would have to look to see if those same, if that curb can meet that criteria of the 25-year storms. But definitely, yes, we're looking into that.
Okay, I guess that's, you know, developers would probably rather not have to put in a curb and then take it out.
Yes.
So I think that's where the issue is there.
Correct.
But, you know, in terms of what our standard is, I mean, that, I think we need to kind of have that decided early on, so we're not dragging this thing out. So if it is 6 inch, it is 6 inch. And
Yes, sir.
maybe there's some, something we could do through development services to where they don't have to build something and take it out. If, you know, have some sort of system to where you're not, you know,
Yes,
losing all that material.
Correct.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Smith.
I just want to thank you, Gabe, for the minor street going proactive rather than reactive on the minor ditch with it, because right now we're waiting for calls, and those calls come in when we get a rain.
Yes, sir.
So by doing what you're doing and becoming proactive, I think that is going to be just a huge help. So it's very exciting, and also seeing your herbicide program too, because we all know that with growth and ditches on there, we lose our capacity. So I think that really for the coming, when that comes in place, it'll be very good in maintaining, to Councilman Hernandez's, you know, maintaining that ditch on a schedule rather than on an ad hoc. Oh, my house is flooding, my driveway is flooding, so
Correct,
on
sir.
there. So thank you very much for
Yes, sir.
instituting that.
Councilman Pusley.
So I'll go you one better, Councilman Hunter. You said they brought up the deal in there about the catch baskets or nets a couple of years ago. When I served on the Stormwater Committee back in the late 90s, we were discussing that very issue, and they brought all kinds of information to us in. And the fact that the city never took any action on that is just abysmal. It should have been done years ago. So my question related to the catches now is when we have one of these flash rain events where we get 4 or 5 inches in an hour and a half, are those going to become an impediment to the drainage system?
No, sir. We'll work that into our standard operating procedures when a rain comes. So we have our Vector trucks already, you know, roaming the city when we know we're going to get one of these big rains. So we can start stationing them there at these certain locations to, you know, make sure it doesn't get overloaded. But I think there are some fail-safes within these, you know, systems so that the current capacity still is able to flow out and not cause issues upstream.
Okay. So you don't actually remove, and I don't know, is this a basket that goes in the drain pipe itself, or?
No, I mean, it's
Or is it
actually
the
as
end of
big
the
as
drain pipe?
So the one at Waters Edge Park is going to be, you know, right before it goes across the section that's closed. So we're going to catch it before the actual outlet into the bay. So that's going to be the big kind of baffle box system that we're going to put in there. The other Vortex one, I believe, is going close to the hospital, which is the large manhole that basically filters out the sediment and the floatables, and I said like a trash rack at the one at Louisiana. So
Okay.
we're going to be trying out different systems. You know, this is a pilot
which one
program
yeah.
to see which one works out best for us and which one, you know, gives us the best bang for our
Yeah.
buck also.
Okay. You know, back when they made those presentations to us, they also made presentations about, in our major channel ditches, installing debris traps along those channel ditches at the bottom of them to basically help filter out some of that stuff as it's coming down the ditches. Have we ever looked at that?
No, sir, but that is going to be part of that grant that we got from Texas Water Development Board. Like I said, you know, there's
Okay.
40 miles of channels that influence Oso Creek. So we're going to look into some green improvements also along those channels.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I'm very happy to see it do this. Like I said, the fact that the city hasn't done this, and I want to applaud, Peter, your leadership, and Gabriel, your department's leadership on getting this done, and the mayor, helping to nudge you along the way too has been great. So this is something that is long, long overdue for this city.
It is. There'll be a groundbreaking for it, like I said.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll all be there with you looking at the basket, getting installed. Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I left a question off here. A lot of times, some of these ditches that we have water in them all year long.
Correct.
And they almost are becoming habitats, right? So I didn't know if there was some.
Unprotected.
So I mean, is that how we intend to keep them? I mean, because and I've seen the ones, like, I mentioned the ditch 64 when we were talking about hike and bike trails, but that one has water all day long. The one that's coming off of Yorktown and it's not Sunwood, it's right there, right off of Weber, the next street over, right? So that's constantly has water in it. So, and then, to go along with that question, the ditches that go through Kings Crossing Golf Course that aren't our ditches, they're still on private property that, that we don't maintain, those have kind of similar situation. How are we addressing those as well as the ditches that don't belong to us? There's one off of Lipes that is kind of a development area that hasn't been done. We visited that location. So how are we dealing with these things that don't belong to us but yet are part of our drainage system? And that goes along with all those retention ponds, we call them lakes, in area that aren't really getting maintenance. And so can you kind of give us an idea of what your thoughts are there?
So dealing with the private, I think our stance is if it's affecting public safety, if those ditches, there's one big, golf cart crossing there at Kings Crossing, if that is starting to affect, upstream, houses, neighborhoods, we would react with, emergency services to those issues, but, getting those, we would have to get right of entries, it's a slippery slope once you start getting into maintaining private property that should be maintained by property owners. The lakes at the HOA, that would take, some sort of marine operation to, get a boat, get a dredger out there.
It'd be a dredging operation.
Yeah, so it's, we're trying to get to where we need to get with our system first. And then I think we can start looking at, other issues that we might have. But, like I said, if it becomes an issue of public safety, we would have no problem getting in there and fixing the problem. But right now, we need to get our infrastructure in line before, that infrastructure, I think, is the goal
Well,
for us.
I don't want to be reactive in the sense where we have a major rain event and then we have to go and do something on an emergency basis because we weren't proactive on it. But going to that point, Development Services are continuing to build these retention ponds. They just built a couple more out on off of 2444 in the Kitty Hawk area, right? But I mean, if we're allowing them to build them, how about the maintenance of it, right? It was like I said, a developer will build it and then they're gone.
So it becomes the HOA. So I think, I don't know if, in our code of ordinances, could code enforcement, get involved with, I know they get involved with standing water sometimes with, tall grass. I mean, would that fall into kind of their purview of, you need to maintain, this piece of property, or who's responsible for maintaining it?
And that goes to the lake off of Holly that belongs to us.
Which one?
Is it Lakeview? What is,
Oh, yes, Turtle Pond.
the Turtle Pond? Okay,
Yes.
so that's a retention pond as well. So are you maintaining that or is that Parks and Recreation?
We're not maintenance it, so I couldn't.
Okay, so, I mean, this is a continuing
Yeah.
problem with this kind of stuff, right? So
Right.
I think, ultimately, that's going to be a budget issue at some point as to how do we do this? I mean, if we're going to have to dredge that lake at some point, but then that goes back to, is it a habitat now? Is it, how are we dealing with these kind of things? So I think you should look into this and make sure that we have some sort of budget associated with that going forward. But, something to consider for the long term.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And also one last Cheerio that's on here is our in-house street sweeping. So we plan on bringing street sweeping completely in-house. So we currently have 4 street sweepers on order. That would bring our fleet up to 6. We're gonna look to get to about a fleet of 12 to 13. And you'll see on the next slide, what kind of cycles are we gonna get from those improvements that we've just proposed. So stormwater inlet cleaning and maintenance. So this is the improvement that we're requesting this year. Currently FY22, you'll see we're on about a 3.5-year cycle per inlet. This improvement will allow us to go to just a little over a year maintenance for one of those over 20,000 inlets. Currently vegetation maintenance is on a 20 times per year cycle, so we mow twice a month during the wet months. So 8 months we're mowing twice, and the 4 cold months we're mowing once a month. So to come up to 20 times per cycle on those areas. So in-house street sweeping. So with this increase of the 4 street sweepers coming in, you'll see the neighborhoods at 2 times per month, the collectors at 4 times per month, and the arterials at 8. Our ultimate goal, you'll see on FY27, is to get to residentials 4 times a year, collectors and arterials 12 times a year, and that'll be a complete in-house program. Our minor channel bar ditches that we were just discussing, so currently is as requested, as needed. So with those 2 improvements in 24 and 25, we'll get those on a 3-year cycle. Major channels, with that improvement last year, we're going to be on a 2-year cycle now for those major channels, mowing and grading. Some of the issues might be, and I want to look with that grant program, you say you see standing water. I mean, you got a long reach, with a bucket on it, and to get the grades perfect and not have any, low spots where water can, collect. I want to maybe think of, pilot channels. I know some of these have pilot channels in them. So they've, it's kind of concrete on the bottom from one end, from one outlet to another. So when they do come and grade, they already kind of have that, grade set where they're grading, and there's no low spots or anything. So it'll just flow directly from one outlet to the next outlet. So that's something I want to look at with the grant program. So next slide, the 5-year forecast of the stormwater fee. So last year, we had a budget that totaled just about 18 million. This year, you'll see the budget is 23.36, so it includes the improvements with that inlet maintenance crew and also debt service from our CIP project. So stormwater does have its own CIP projects, but we also have street support. So any of these major arterials where we're upgrading stormwater, we're responsible for that. So we'll be paying for those upgrades out of CIP. So that debt service will come to us. So like I said, the total for this year is 23.36 million. And you'll see the increase from 24 to 27, bringing in those additional crews, bringing in the sweepers. So all of the improvements, and this also includes debt service for all those years also. So this year, we're proposing to increase Tier 1 to 577, Tier 2 to 769, Tier 3 to 1346, and then the non-residential will go to 769 per ERU.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you. So you've got the debt service in, we're talking about the bond coming up and things. How does that work? So currently on our water bills, we are paying some debt out of that. So will that be dropping? Will this fee pick up all future stormwater debt?
Yes, sir. So any fee any debt prior to the enactment of the stormwater fee last year is still within the water.
We're still embedded in the water
Yeah,
rates.
and anything going forward will now be on the stormwater fee.
Okay, so over a long period of time, then we'll see some pressure off of the water rates because as that debt pays off.
I guess,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right, as that debt falls off or is paid
Yeah.
off in total, there'll be relief in that fund.
In that fund on there, and we're
Right.
picking it up. So what we're seeing in this, really basically doubling over 5 years with it is this change. A lot of this increase is driven by that.
Correct. The majority of the increase is driven by debt service.
Okay, and then conversely, taking that pressure off the water side.
Correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, speaking of revenue on the stormwater fees, in the budget, you have, I guess, originally 4.5 million for residential fees, but your estimate is 65 million, or 6,500,000, and you're gonna go to 770,000. Is that $1.15 increase? Is that?
Which one is it?
So, for this fiscal year, we budgeted at 9 months since it started in January.
Okay.
Next fiscal year will be the full 12
The
months.
full year, okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
that includes, so that's kind of, goes to my next question of the commercial fees for non-residential. You originally budgeted the 9 million, which I guess is for
The 9 months last year.
9 months, so now, and then you're
it's-
going to 15 million.
So, this fee will start in October, so we'll have a full 12 months collection with the new fee schedule.
So if you just kind of approach it, approach that out, if you're doing 9 million one year, and you assume that you're gonna do another 3 million off of that, that would bring it up to 12 million, but you're budgeting 15. Is
Well,
there
last
a
year-
major increase for an additional 3 million?
Well, the last year, the first 3 months were still covered out of water utilities. So the water rate covered the first 3 months, and then we picked it up in January. So, that 3 million was picked up by water for the first 3 months.
Okay, but there's an additional 3 million based on, okay, so if you're getting 9 million for 9 months, right?
Okay?
About $1 million a month.
$1 million a month.
So you add another 3 months to that, that's 12 million, but you're budgeting 15 million. So you got an additional 3 million there that you're charging non-residential customers. What rate is that? Is that, how is it you're budgeting for so much more than what, it would extrapolate out to?
So is it the improvements, the 3.57? So that's-
Improvements, this is new infrastructure?
Yes, so this is the inlet maintenance crew and it's the debt service that are driving the 3.5 million.
Well, I'm talking about revenue.
Well, the
Not-
revenue needs to cover those, I guess, is,
Well, I
So
get
the-
it, but I
It's
mean,
also the
what-
increase.
So what's the increase on non-residential stormwater?
so on our parcel management system, we know how many ERUs we're we know how many ERUs we're billing out total. So total within the city, we know our ERUs. So with a budget of, 23.36, we back that number into, okay, we have this many ERUs coming in, what is the rate needed for that ERU? So based on the the new budget of 23.36, that's how much we need to be charging per ERU to get that revenue in.
Okay, I get your methodology.
Yeah.
What is the rate that you're actually gonna be charging non-residential
So it's the
users?
769 per ERU. So if you have 5 ERUs, it's 769 times 5.
Per month?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll need to take a closer look at that, because I know I'm probably gonna get phone calls about it. But what was it last year per ERU?
The 612.
612? So you,
It's the $1.57 increase. So it's the same as the tier 2 increase. So the tier 2 is 1 ERU, is the same as the commercial rate. So you'll see last year the tier 2 was 612.
so
and
$1.57, additional $1.57 is gonna equate to 3 million, additional $3 million.
Correct, sir.
Okay,
Okay. Councilman.
thank you.
Okay, Councilman Pusley?
Yeah, Gabriel, did our new stormwater fee structure, was it completely acted where it was all of fiscal year 2022?
No, sir, it was
Or
only 9
we
months.
We enacted it I couldn't remember.
In January, it enacted. So it was only January through, I guess, this September.
Okay. So what was the amount of increase in revenue to the Stormwater Department based on just those few months as compared to the full fiscal year before? For fiscal year 2021, what was your
So
total
fiscal year
revenue?
2021, we started with around 16 million was our base budget with, you know, back then when it was still in the water rates, I think we had close to 17 million in debt service. So when we brought stormwater, you know, services to Public Works, that 16 million followed. We had $2 million worth of improvements, which was the major channel last year, the major channel crew. And then, you know, street sweepers. So that increased that base budget, which you'll see on this slide, on the FY22, you went from 16 with the improvements to 18.
Right.
We've also, you know, you'll see the new base budget for 23. We've had, like I said earlier, some realignment of staff, some staff upgrades as far as reclassification. So now our new baseline, if we had no improvements this year and no debt service, our baseline would be that 19.79. But the 19.79, you know, you would still have to include debt service because we still have to make that payment. And then with the improvements of the inlet maintenance crew, so it's a total improvements this year of 3.57. So our baseline right now, if we had no debt service, if we weren't going to make any improvements, would be at 19.79.
Okay, so from approximately in 2021, 16
Correct.
to 19, so you saw a $3 million increase in revenues.
We planned the fee for that increase.
Okay.
So we planned the fee last year for that 18 million. But I believe we brought in just a little, or we're projected to bring in just a little over that, so we were correct on our fee. So this year, to bring in the revenues for that 23.36, this is the rate schedule.
Okay. Well, we don't need to get in the weeds here. You can get it to me later, but what I'm looking for is I'd like to try to track what our stormwater revenues were using the old system compared to what we're doing now.
Correct. So when it was in water?
Pardon?
When it was in the water rate?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So going back to the old system before we implemented the new stormwater fees, what was our revenues then on a year-over-year basis?
So
And
it
you can
should have
give me
been
an
around-
average. I don't need to know.
It
the
should have been
exact-
around 32 million, like I said. You would have had 16 in base operations and around 16 in debt service.
Okay.
So I believe back then, stormwater was budgeted for about $33 million.
In revenues?
Yes,
Okay,
to cover the operations and debt service.
yeah, okay. Well, I don't care what it covers. I'm just looking for revenue. So
Yes, sir.
what has that now under the new rate system, what are we earning?
So we're earning exactly what the improvements come out to, like I said. So this year, we earned the 18 million. So based on that rate schedule, we're coming in at that 18 million. So this next fiscal year with the
But that's
upgrade.
just your base program. It doesn't include your debt service.
Well, we didn't have a debt service last year. This is going to be
Okay.
our first year for a debt service payment.
Okay, all right.
So the 19.7, you would add debt service, and if we do the improvements, that's how you get to the 23.36.
Okay. Well, like I said, you can get me the numbers later, but I'm looking more along the lines of like you would do a profit and loss statement. Okay, what's my revenues? What's, from year-over-year basis from, go to like year 2020 to now, and what your projections are for 2023.
Okay, sir.
I'm just trying to see what change in revenue stream we had based on the new stormwater system.
Okay.
Or stormwater fees, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thank you.
That's all the questions, Gabe.
So this is one fee we had in last year that kind of got skipped over, so we're just bringing it back. So this is our floodplain review and inspection fee. So it's just a one-time $100 inspection to ensure if you're constructing within our special flood hazard area or any floodplain or floodways, just to make sure that the structure was completed correctly. We get audited by FEMA because we're part of the National Flood Insurance Program. So this allows us to continue in that program. So this is one of the improvements that I've been mentioning. So with this improvement, we're adding additional 7 positions and also the Vector trucks that come with these 2 crews. So we're able to double the number of crews from 2 to 4, increase the cycle or decrease the cycle from 3.5 to 1.25 years per maintenance cycle. This is our pay-as-you-go, the $500,000 annually for any emergencies that may arrive, any cave-ins that may arrive. So like I said, last year, we've done 2 of the crossings there at Kings Crossing. With this money, we'll finish out the 3rd one. We're currently working a cave-in there on Omnistad. So the old bridge that goes over Omnistad had old corrugated metal, just like Kings Crossing did. So we're going to be putting in some RCP there. So this is what that funding's going towards. Also, we're proposing $50,000 for staff training within Stormwater. So also, keeping them up to date on technology. We do a lot of confined space, keep that training up. So that $50,000 will go towards that.
Gabe, 1 second,
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
Councilman Smith?
Yeah, Gabe, if you can go back on the elevation fee for FEMA on there. So right now, we're requiring, before you pour, to have an engineer go out and shoot the grades on the farms. Then after the pour, we're requiring an engineer to go out and shoot the grades again. So the folks in the flood zone, we've got a pretty good level on it. And, this is costing, 2 times with an engineer or somebody building out there, they're paying that, whatever they're doing with development services. I'm concerned this may be a bit of overkill, so since we're already requiring so much out of those folks doing there with it. So we're tacking on another $100 above and beyond the 2 inspections that are required there, whatever we're going through for development services. So let's coordinate on it with it, and we're getting the elevations out there by having the engineering community. And when you came from Naismith, I'm sure you all are out there shooting that. And then we're saying $100 more. I think we're going to get some kicking, and in my opinion, rightfully so on that.
So this would be considered a final inspection, before a COO is issued to these developments or residential, commercial. It's important that we get it, that we make sure it's correct. So I guess this is the final inspection.
Yeah.
Because in the past, they just did their community assistance visit. So FEMA came down, there was a list of, homes and permits dating back to like 2018 that they wanted more information on. This just allows us to make sure, we have no control. Once we give that COO, someone's going to move in there. And if it wasn't built properly, now we're going to have, they might become a repetitive loss, or, having, the public safety issue. So this is just the last check before we give that COO to that resident or to that business that's within that special flood hazard area, to make sure they're complying with FEMA and our rules.
Well, I guess my point is we're checking. So do we need some of the earlier checks if we're going to do this last check?
And there's been those previous checks, and then still at the end, there's an issue. So
Well, when you have a professional engineer or surveyor sign off on something, which we're required to do, not once but twice.
Correct.
With it, that the best way to not have fatalities on the streets, not have anybody driving on them. I think we've got overkill in this. The fact that we're already requiring 2 checks by engineers. It's a big expense. And we ought to be able to coordinate with those engineers that you just do that certificate to development services before they issue the CO, rather than having another $100 permit going on there. So if Urban, whoever doing the survey, Voss or that kind of stuff, just turn it in to development services, that checkbox for a CO, rather than bringing something through Stormwater.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to me, it's just more bureaucracy. It's not like we're not doing it. We are doing it absolutely right now. So if to satisfy FEMA on there, maybe we need to be working through development services, since we are doing so much right now. And this is not inexpensive. Getting a surveyor out there not once but twice to measure that slab.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Gabe, I mean, is that possible? Like what Greg is explaining, is that, and if, I'm sure it is, but I mean, what is your argument against it? Like what is the, and I hate to use the word detriment, but what are the are there pros and cons to that? There's a reason we're doing it, so I'm curious as to his idea, how does that work and what are the advantages or disadvantages?
I guess FEMA's not gonna see that, you know, the elevation certificate, if they feel, you know, that elevation, they question some elevation certificates sometimes. And if they feel that it wasn't built, we get dinged on the NFIP program. So it's just, you know, for us to be continuing to get to the class we want, we're at class 8 right now, to get to that class 6, you know, this is one last, our ultimate check to make sure this building, this residence was built correct. So when we do have that audit, when FEMA does come and audit us, you know, we shouldn't have any of these violations anymore. You know, it's you run the risk of, you know, of these kind of violations that they'll, you know, call out. So, you know, they go and drive, you know, they'll get these elevation certificates that have been submitted to us, and then during their community action visit, they'll go and drive, and they'll, you know, some of the comments we got back were, please check this elevation certificate. We don't, you know, for accuracy. You know, we got some of those this last time. So this is just our last check before, you know, we give that CEO, that COO, and then, you know, basically we have no recourse to say, you know, well, you built it wrong, you know, please elevate it. So it's just our last check. So it's just something to, you know, within that program that we are with FEMA.
Well, and I think, Gabe, nobody's been a bigger advocate for FEMA protections than I have with it. And are you, with this $100, are you going to go out and verify that elevation? Are you physically going to go out there?
No, we can.
It's just paperwork.
Yeah, you can visually see if you know, using other, you know, past ECs, or, you know, you can see if there's an issue or not. I think, you know, if it's
so
like
the
a foot,
professional
so,
surveyors are not doing their job. So that seal survey that they're doing, we're saying, nope, we don't accept that.
not that we don't accept it, but
Well, we don't believe it.
yeah, we
We
might
got
question
to
it.
double check it.
Yes, sir.
I think we got a problem someplace else besides getting this extra on there with it. So if it, you know, that seal means a lot. You know, you've
Oh,
got
yes.
your own seal with
Yes,
it.
sir.
So if there's an issue there, then we need to be going through the proper channels on that survey rather than creating another level that really won't accomplish anything because you're not going out there and physically verifying it.
Correct.
You're just saying, okay, well, I just checked and this kind of stuff. To me, it's an additional unneeded level, and if we've got other problems on there, we need to work on those problems. If FEMA believes we have surveyors out there that are giving us incorrect information, then maybe that's a state issue with it on there. You know, these, like I say, these are registered professional surveyors.
Yes, sir.
Anybody that has a seal, you know what goes behind that seal, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, that concludes the stormwater presentation and
Okay.
Public Works 2 presentation. So stand by for any other further
I
questions.
think we're okay. I don't see any lights. Thank you.
Yes,
Gabe.
ma'am.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Gabe. Yeah, great job.
Yeah, good job.
Great
Thank you to the
too,
team.
that's
Thank you.
here helping you. Okay, we have our gas operation, where the city is the exclusive gas provider in our community. And Mayor, you got a great text or email from a gas customer the other night that
I
you shared
did.
with me. Yes.
Yes,
right.
we should probably read that, shouldn't
Yeah,
we?
they were just, they had a
Let me
gas
find
leak
it.
apparently, but it was in the after hours, I believe.
What was
and
her name?
They were just, and I get these all the time, Bill, from your services, but they were impressed by the professionalism.
They were, and so what was
Yeah.
said, and I'm gonna read it because
Yeah,
it
go
even
ahead.
includes
Yeah.
the name of the gentleman.
Right.
She said, Paulette, 5-star review. I have to tell you that city gas is in my backyard right now, and this was at 8:49 PM. doing an emergency repair. The foreman I am with is absolutely tremendous, and she capitalized absolutely tremendous. So, you know, and his crew of 4 are incredible and have been so complimentary. I've been so complimentary of their job. Okay, well, then she says a little compliment about me, but we'll skip that over. We'll skip that over. She says the foreman is Rudy Saldivar, and he's been so professional and handled his crew incredibly. And she sent a picture of them working in the evening, and I sent it to Peter because we're just really proud of that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And please send that, you know, on to Rudy as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we will.
Yeah, great job. And we get those often, Bill, so you're doing a great job with your
Oh,
team.
good.
And
Good.
we're proud to have that operation. We do
Yes.
well. You don't hear much about it, but we are the exclusive
That's right.
natural gas provider to residences and also a lot of commercial accounts through the city.
Yeah, I just want to mention along that same line, Mayor, I had lunch with Dan Murphy and his son last week. They're building the new restaurant out on Northwest Boulevard, 624, which we can't wait for it to open because it'll be the third restaurant we have. But he was absolutely complimentary about the service he received from the gas department. He said of all the people he's had to deal with, he said, your guys did the best job. He said, we're right on it, got it taken care of, got his gas service installed, and so he was very complimentary.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much for the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear all this.
Yes.
And it's what I expect from my guys. And I've got Jesse Cantu, he's my assistant director. He doesn't come down here very often, but he works a lot harder than me, so he actually probably deserves a lot of the
Yeah.
credit for this. And then Michelle Dalton, she's our financial superintendent, and she keeps us all in line, so she does a great job. So we'll go ahead and get started on this. So our mission statement is pretty simple, deliver natural gas to customers. But to perform that, there's a lot of work that's involved, installing gas mains and you know, responding to customer service complaints and leaks. And so this is a little bit about the gas department. I know y'all have seen this slide many a times, but we've got about 1,500 miles of mains, 56 or around 57,000 active customers, and we sell about 3,500,000 MCF of gas a year, which is 1,000 cubic foot. So our organization, we did add employees last year. Thank you for those employees. So now we're 164 total. We have 5 separate divisions. Our construction division is the one that does all our in-house construction, so we don't sub out a lot of construction. Actually, we probably have built 99.9% of the mains in the city with in-house forces, and that department does a lot of that work. Our maintenance and operations department, they handle all the service calls and leak calls, and we operate 24/7, 365, so we're always open. And then we have our pressure and measurement department. They're mainly our preventative maintenance group. They do a lot of our above ground infrastructure work on our regulator stations and purchase points. And then our petroleum, it says petroleum superintendent on there, but we really kind of call this the damage prevention department. That's where our line locators are, and we do line locates for gas, of course, water, wastewater, stormwater, and then with this budget's going to include an enhancement, and we're going to add IT to that group. So we're going to start line locating for them on their fiber optic network. And then lastly is our finance and admin group. So our achievements for this year, our first achievement is always having a good annual audit. We get it audited annually by the Railroad Commission, And it's a comprehensive audit over all our programs. And we did pretty good on that this year with no violations. And then our second achievement is completion of all our scheduled gas line replacements. So when they do a street improvement project, our crews are out there replacing those gas mains within that street project. So I consider those probably the most difficult projects that we do because they're larger mains and they have to work with the street construction crews. And so we get dinged really hard, or we get a lot of, we have to eat a lot of crow when we delay those projects. So we do not want to get behind on those. And then our third achievement is completion of all our gas mains for all our new subdivisions, which this year there have been a lot of new subdivisions coming up. I think Brazelton, we talk pretty much every week with them and all the other builders, and they've been building a lot of new homes and new subdivisions. So we've done pretty good keeping up with that. And then our fourth achievement is that we launched our Plumbers to People program. That program, we actually just finished our first home recently. We've been kind of trying to get everything working and get it started. And we did complete one replacement on a home in Corpus. And I think we have 14 more homes that we're currently getting new plumbing contracts to go ahead and move forward on replacing those. And then we have several others that are coming up that we're going to add to that list. So that program's underway, and hopefully it will just continue to excel. And we did recently get our other $100,000 for that program this month. So on performance measures, so on this chart, you'll see that our linear feet of gas mains and service installed, it went down a little bit this year. And that's mostly because of we are doing that DAG project out at the Naval Air Station. So one of our crews is out there working on that project. And that footage of main is not included on this chart. And then we have increased a little bit on our responses to service turn-on requests that are within 24 hours by 1%. It's going to be really hard to get 100% on that because not everybody calls in and wants their service turned on, wants it turned on within 24 hours. So there are some that we have to schedule at a later time because they have to be at the home for us to turn that on. And then you can see that the number of new taps installs has increased this year. It increased a lot last year, and it's just continuing to stay at that high number. And then the last one's just the total volume of gas that we sold. So our proposed budget increased this year. A lot of that's due to our natural gas pricing. I think that paying for the natural gas that we purchase is about 30% of our budget. And as everybody knows, gasoline and natural gas prices has increased significantly this year, and we have to, pay for that increase. So a lot of that number is with the purchase gas adjustment costs, and then the other part of that is our construction department. We did increase in that department just because the cost for us to buy pipe and meters and everything to run the construction department has increased as well. But our budget and our current gas rates are adequate to handle that increase. So we're not proposing any rate increase for next year. This slide just kind of shows how all our expenditures are broken up. But you can see that a large portion of that is attributed to purchasing natural gas. Our first enhancement is to purchase 3 vehicles and machinery. This is a half-ton truck, a 3-ton trailer, and then a mini excavator. It seems kind of higher because also on that is $200,000 that we're putting into the vehicle replacement fund. And then here's the enhancement that I mentioned earlier with our line locators. We're adding 2 line locators to the department. And what those line locators are going to support is locating fiber optic lines for IT, like I mentioned. And then also, we're going to expand the number of locates we do for the water department. We do, originally when we took that over, the water department's never actually located service lines, and they asked that we try to locate service lines as well as the mains. So we're going to try to put that into the program. So these extra employees will help that effort because that will increase the time that they have to spend on those locates. That's all I have.
Okay, Councilman Pesley. Okay, Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Bill, and I want to reiterate what has been said here with the gas department. I think you guys do a great job on there. We very rarely get calls on there, and that's always a good thing for us. And the fact that our rates are some of the lowest in the state means a lot, that we're really delivering to our customers a good value with it. In the budget, I know we have the pass-through, but in the well-named Inflation Reduction Act that just passed, there is a tax on natural gas. It's going to increase the cost of natural gas. Do we know the impact of that? I know all of our customers can expect, that's going to be a pass-through on there. So this new federal tax is taking place. How much that's going to affect our bills?
I'll have to get back with you on it. It's so recent that we really haven't looked into that. So.
Yeah, there's 2 things. I know on fuel costs, it's going to drive, it's 18 cents on fuel costs by reducing inflation, and a portion natural gas, it goes with the price of natural gas. But it would be good to tell our customers how much they're going to be paying extra due to the federal government's Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay. Yeah, we'll figure that out. And the administration is not friendly to us for sure.
Councilman Hernandez.
I'm sure that was a facetious way of saying that. But I just want to ask some questions. You're going to be purchasing some vehicles. I'm assuming all your vehicles in your inventory are CNG, right?
We have a large number of our vehicles in CNG. Now, we have been looking at the half-ton trucks and whether those are really affordable to go to a natural gas vehicle, because the problem is some of the OEM manufacturers, they just have started to charge so much to upgrade a half-ton truck. When you're looking at adding $12,000, $14,000 to the cost of a half-ton truck to upgrade it to CNG, it's very hard to recoup those costs. Now, when you're looking at bigger vehicles that burn a lot of fuel, especially like our garbage trucks or something like that, and high mileage, then a lot of times it makes sense.
So what analysis have you done? Because I mean, obviously the decision-making process should be: are you saving enough on fuel to overcome what additional expenses you have for CNG?
Yeah.
Have you provided that information to our fleet and
management? I know that a couple of years ago we did do that when Jim was here. I think that's why he kind of decided to try to steer away from the half-ton trucks.
Yeah, it's 3 things, Councilman. It's the fuel issue, the maintenance costs, and then the trade-in value.
Right.
So all those 3 have to if you want to save money, they have to.
Right. I mean, it changes year to year. Right.
Well, now one thing, and we probably need to get with them and relook at that, because now that we do have the landfill to gas project, that's a little different, because they actually get it's called RIMS. Don't ask me what that means, but essentially, if we're using that natural gas in vehicles, they get a huge tax. I don't know if it's tax credit or just basically they get paid to produce that natural gas as long as it's going into.
Well, the reason I say this is that we need to do that analysis I don't want to do it for the sake of doing it. Because ultimately, next time the fuel prices get to $4 per gallon or $5 for diesel, that that calculation changes.
Yeah.
So we got to look at what the history of fuel prices or what we expect them to be. I mean, this administration and their Inflation Reducing Act is not very friendly to our
Yeah.
natural gas and gas.
And unfortunately, they're not pushing a lot of the natural gas vehicles in that bill either.
No, they're pushing automakers to do electric, which really, you know, how is electricity created? Natural gas plants,
Yeah.
right? So it's really.
If I can step in, we are ordering all the half tons and three-quarter tons.
It's on the actual mic. There's a little triangle there that should turn green.
You have to hold it now.
Can you push that button for him?
Okay. We don't let Jesse out of the office too often.
All the half tons and three-quarter tons are being ordered on CNG. It's the larger vehicles that are diesel, but.
And that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it just, you know, I guess what we're looking at is we need the analysis to make sure we're making the right decision. Everything you should do should be on a financial analysis, and maybe you can get some help from the finance department on this. But whatever you need to do, just I want to make sure that we're making good decisions.
One other thing that's come up in.
Not like the gas chiller thing.
Okay.
What's that? Oh, the gas chillers are great.
It just the cost was.
Those gas chillers are working very good, and if there's any other buildings that need them, I highly recommend them. The other thing to consider is with the supply chain stuff, sometimes for some reason, one of these vehicles, if you want to get it with CNG, is harder to get than the other vehicle. So, you know, if you're waiting a couple of years for a vehicle, it's going to hurt your operations too. But we'll look into that. We'll look into that.
Okay, and in terms of your incentive programs, what is your results? Are you getting what is your percentage of new homes that are with natural gas? You mentioned Brazelton, or I guess whatever his company is named, the Lenore.
100% of Brazelton homes are natural gas. I know there are almost all the larger builders. Matsugatti, I believe, is 100%, right, Jesse? The last time we checked.
Can you get us a solid percentage?
Yeah,
I want to make sure that
it's real close to 100%. I think what happens is there are some people that buy a house and request it not to have natural gas. So we can't, you know, force them to choose natural gas.
Right.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'll
just see if
get
you can
you
get us
some
some numbers on that, because I want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're getting the
Okay.
incentives are being in there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions.
Okay.
Great, we may
Thank
have
you.
time for, did you want to try to do engineering in the last 15 minutes? I think Jeff can probably get it done.
Can we get it done?
Yeah, Jeff, you think you can get it done? So we can break at noon, yes, sir?
Gil, did you,
Pull Gil's.
Oh, yeah, I'll be asking
turn
questions.
off your light, Gil, please. Just turn it off now.
Ignore Gil's light.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll leave Gil. Yeah, our sandwiches back.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I'm gonna,
Okay, we're still mourning for a little bit. Good morning, Mayor, council members. Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services, and my presentation actually has two parts. First part, we're going to just recap what is in this year's CIP, and then we're going to talk about my department budget. So, without hesitation, this is a recap of what is in the current CIP. The reason we're presenting this, it's not really my work product, but once this is approved, we are tasked with bringing these projects to fruition. This is really put together by the Capital Budget Office in consultation with the operating departments and leadership. And this year's total is $617 million. This is how that breaks down. You've seen these diagrams. The uses are in the middle and the revenues are on the outside. The biggest source of revenue is revenue bonds, and followed by GO bonds, and shortly behind that, certificates of obligation. And the biggest customers are water, wastewater, and followed by streets. This is another thing that people kind of grade us by is how we're doing on the bond programs, and these bars illustrate how we've done on these past programs. 12's nearly complete. I think we've got maybe one project hanging out there. We're about 2/3 complete on Bond 18, and I'm pleased to announce yesterday we opened bids on the first 2 Bond 2020 streets, and we've got 2 more Bond 20 streets that we plan to advertise in the next couple of weeks. Recap of the water CIP. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Water CIP. We've got big water supply improvements, Wesley Seal and Choke Canyon dams, Mary Rhodes pipeline and the raw water pump station, as well as major improvements at Owen Stevens, and a big effort to renew distribution lines throughout the city. And you'll see this bottom bullet on all the slides. That street project support is for replacing the pipelines within the construction limits of the bond projects. And that's $157 million. Wastewater CIP, we've continuing a series of improvements at all 6 wastewater treatment plants consistent with the 2017 resolution that council passed. Also major upgrades to lift stations, and of course the consent decree collection improvements, and that was $121 million. Streets, $104.7 million. Public health and safety, and of course the biggest one on that is the new police training academy and fire station number 3, and that's $79 million. Stormwater CIP is $60 million, and probably the biggest thing on that is the support for the bond projects. Parks and Rec, $43 million. Marina CIP, $16.5 million. And public facilities, $19 million. And I'd also point out that there's a lot of facilities projects that are buried into those other budgets as well. And gas, $9.6 million. And airport, $6.2 million. This next slide is a recap of the Bond 22 program, $125 million, 4 propositions, $92.5 million for streets, $20 million for Parks and Rec, $10 million for public safety, and $2.5 million for libraries. And of course, this isn't in the CIP because it hasn't passed the voters yet. If the referendum passes in November, we'll bring an item to amend the CIP to add these projects to it. Okay, now I'm to the engineering services budget part. And I'd like to make an introduction. I'm joined by Brett Van Hazel, who I'm sure you guys see a lot of. He managed our construction division. And Claudia Pena, you don't see her quite as much. She manages all of our back office functions. So what do we do in engineering services? Our mission is to cost effectively manage the execution of the city's capital construction project portfolio. So we do what's known in the trade as program management. We're essentially the city's program management office for delivering the capital improvements program. So here's a few statistics about engineering. We typically have 70-plus projects under construction at any point in time. Our throughput for the past year averaged a little over $15 million a month, and our average project size is $5.2 million. Here's the way we're organized. We have 3 divisions, and we have the construction management division that Brett manages. We have what we call a support division that has all of our financial management, AP, HR, IT functions, and then, of course, Ratna, who, you know, she manages the front-end part. She gets projects from concept to bid award, and then we hand that off to Brett for managing the construction. These are our achievements for the past year. We got design underway on all of the Bond 2020 projects. As I mentioned, we opened bids on the first two street projects yesterday. We successfully completed over 30 major capital projects. Our aggregate change order amount was 2.15% of contract value. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, that doesn't include the change order that council approved last week on Packard Channel. That was a little bit of a special case, but that would take it up to about 3.5% if you had that. We'd run this number prior to that. And, of course, pulling off all the planning for the $125 million Bond 22 program. These are our performance metrics. Now, this is not the stuff we track on a monthly basis. We look at things like how long it takes us to process invoices, change orders, things like that. This is more how we're doing as an organization from a high-level view. So one of the things that we look at is how much work are we putting in place per year. And this year, our estimate is we'll have about $180 million. Next year, I'm projecting $225 million. And we look at what our cost is relative to the work that we put in place. And our estimate for this year is 5.14%. And my target, I'd like to keep that under 6%. And why is that? I look at some peer organizations like Naval Facilities Command or Army Corps of Engineers. They charge 5.7% to basically do the same thing we do on MILCON projects, which is military projects that are north of $6 million in value. So I think we're comparing pretty favorably with what they charge. Change order percent is something we look at, like to keep that below 3%. And this last thing, the throughput that we have per position in our organization for this year, we think it'll be $2.3 million, and we would like to keep that north of $2 million per employee. This next slide illustrates the way that annual throughput has been going. So the blue bar is the work in place, and the bar on top of that is what our budget is relative to that amount, and then the line is the number of positions we have. So we are proposing to increase our positions on this, but as you can see, that's made up by the expected increase in throughput that we are expected to deliver. So our total proposed budget is $13 million, and that is a change, and I'm going to go over the decision packages that are driving that change. This is how that breaks out between our divisions, between construction management, project management, which is Rotten's division, and our support service division. The outer ring is the revenues, and most of our budget is covered by charges to CIP projects. There is a new fee that Development Services is collecting for us that council passed last year. One of the functions that we do in Brett's division is inspection of new private development where there's public infrastructure that's being built that we're going to take ownership, maintenance responsibility for. And also when people are doing work in our right-of-way, street cuts where they have traffic control plans and so forth that are supporting private development, we inspect that. And we made a decision last year to recover that. Historically, it's been paid for utilities or public works, and we're trying to recover that in a fee on development. So this private development inspections, what we're trying to do is just ensure that this work is done correctly so that it doesn't become a liability for the city, that the work conforms to our standards. You know, this is stormwater, water, wastewater, roadways, sidewalks, signage, all of the public sector infrastructure that you need to develop raw land and turn it into improved land that you can build homes or build commercial buildings on. So we do about 1,000 of those type of inspections a month. And we average about 5 new public improvement projects per month. So we have 9 inspectors that are working on this. Some of those are partially dedicated. It equates to about 7.5 full-time equivalents. We came up with a revenue need to support that function of about $700,000. Now, last year, after it was passed in the budget, we agreed to a 4-year implementation plan with the development community, and this is what this looks like. If you've got a public improvement without a plat, this is like a site plan. There's a set amount, started out at 175 last year, and it's going to go up to 350. The next fee is an acreage fee for a public improvement with a plat, and that's started out last year at 225, and that's going to escalate up to 450. And then there's a plus up per lot for over 24 lots. Anyway, this fee structure is intended to generate about $700,000 worth of revenue. It's not generating that now, and the difference is being made up by charges to public works and utilities.
Right, I know it's getting late, but this is an important slide. So basically, this is one of those legacy issues we discovered. So the city, the taxpayer has been subsidizing the developer when it comes to new construction, because Jeff's team would go in and inspect to make sure the construction is appropriate and meets the code. But we've been doing it with no fee on brand new development. So that's not fair to the taxpayer that foots the bill for new development.
Right.
So this fee, we worked with the development community. Last year, we agreed to a 4-year implementation plan, and that's what you see here in front of us. So this is not new news. This is.
Can you go back?
Yeah, go back to that slide.
Yeah.
This is not new news. It's not price gouging.
Right.
It doesn't even recover the cost, even in year 4. We're still subsidizing it to some extent, but it's the development community, Al was there last year helping us, and we reminded them again this year, agreed to a 4-year escalation, if you will, or implementation.
Right.
But again, it's brand new homes, brand new commercial, where city people go in at general fund expense, taxpayer expense, and inspect new development.
Right.
New water, new sewer, new roads, new curbs. And that's not how it should operate, so.
Okay.
We've never charged a fee for it. I know it's hard to believe, Councilman, but it's.
Yeah, I remember.
And we're only collecting 50% of the charge in 2023.
Right.
So the taxpayer is subsidizing the rest.
Yeah.
Now, so the way this used to work, we can't charge it to projects, so we would run a deficit. And at the end of the year, the budget office would say, you need to go get this money, you're in the hole. And we would typically go to utilities and get it out of utilities. And then the year before last, we actually turned in a decision package to say, okay, we're going to stop doing this. And it was just an effort to see who yelled first. And, and anyway, they tore up my decision package, and so we didn't answer the question. We had a meeting after the budget was passed, and we agreed, okay, let's just fund it half out of Public Works and half out of utilities. That kind of made sense. So that's sort of where we are right now. We've implemented that fee. We haven't collected very much on it, and it is really is driven by development of land. If you're wanting to develop land and put something on there that you can sell as a house or a fully developed lot, you know, we have an effort that we expend to make sure that is done correctly and doesn't become a liability for the city.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you. And, you know, when I go out in these new developments that are several years old and we have a 30-year street design, the streets are coming up. So, Jeff, we've been doing it on the taxpayer's dime, like City Manager Zanoni said. Will we have a better quality of inspection now by doing this? Because as you look, you know, most of our subdivisions are good. I don't want to paint that way, but we got that 80-20 rule or 10 or 20% on there. It's not being built to 30-year with it. You know, they're supposed to be, but the streets wouldn't be coming up. We wouldn't have those depressions in the streets for utilities that are improperly compacted and those kind of things. So I've always thought that that's an area that we need to make sure that this city is getting what those developers are supposed to be turning over to us, which most of them do.
Well, so there's two answers. There may be even more to that question. So, in order to get this done correctly, it has to be designed correctly, and then it has to be built correctly. So, Development Services reviews the plans, and they make sure they comply with whatever the current standards were at the time, which is
Which you give the standards. The standards are city-driven, right?
Correct. We
Yeah.
just did that update this year, and we're actually working on another
Yeah.
update to improve those standards.
And they're
So
30-year standards for streets.
that is
Okay.
what we're doing. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure with the old standard that we were getting that. And so you remember the flap last year
Mm-hmm.
about the geogrid and all of that. We said it was a 30-year street, but then when we allowed the substitution of the geogrid for lime stabilization and high PI soils, I think that significantly reduced that to where we were getting way south of a 30-year street.
Well, and my concern is we go in subdivisions that are 5 years old and they're coming up. So we can't even blame that on the standards. That was construction quality.
Well, and so what we're supposed to do is try and make sure it's built according to the approved drawings, which should conform to our standards. And so that's in Brett's division, and we try to do as good as we can. Now, bear in mind, we got a big city, and these guys are trying to go by these sites once a day and put the eyeballs on, but they're not there every minute of every day.
Right. But I guess as opposed to what we were talking about early on, the elevation certificates, just simply paperwork, here we're talking about physical inspections. You're going out there and checking to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm glad we're instituting this, and if there's anything we should be doing is more of it with there, because as we go in some of these subdivisions, you know.
Greg, to your point, that's the question though. If it's on us, we have the piece of paper that says, here's the standard. We can raise the standard times 10 today. But and it's a question, Brett, do we have what we need to really put eyes on everything that's being built? Because there's always there's a way around everything, okay? And if we have 36 projects right now under construction across the city, it's a lot of construction going on. Do we truly have the manpower to truly inspect what needs to be inspected and the proper oversight? You know, and I know there's I can bet that answer is no. Because if you did, we wouldn't see those streets. So that's what this council is very interested in accomplishing, is how do we decrease anything that's going around the cutting of corners. And I know you can't babysit. You know, you got to have faith that, hey, my guys are inspecting and things are getting done, but we see they're not. That's not a fault thing of us. That's number one, do we have the manpower, and is the proper procedure, is the process by which we're doing it good enough? Can we increase, do we need to improve both? Because that's a big deal. I mean, Peter, if we up these standards, what is that going to do if we can't really make certain that they're being abided by 100% or at least 80%, 90%? I don't even know what's fair to say, but that's to your point. So Brett, how do you see the situation truly?
So I think I have a qualified team that's able to go out
Sure.
and do the inspections that are needed. I think we're out there, an appropriate amount of time, but because we're not out there all the time, we can't see everything. And that's the concern, is when we're not there, what's being done. So,
Right.
and, I would say in order for us to meet that standard, we would have to plus up our
team.
personnel. But if we did that, then we'd have to reevaluate the fee structure, because now we're talking about, a lot more staffing, a lot more costs, et cetera. So if it's a service that we need to provide that coverage, we can do it. obviously, we'd have to go back and evaluate the impact, the financial impact, and then how we recover that, you know. Right now, we try to maintain a reasonable workload amongst the inspectors so that they can provide that coverage. You know, a residential project like a new subdivision requires a lot more attention than, say, a commercial project. So I would say the majority of the time, the inspectors are on that residential property looking at those public improvements. And again, they try to capture as much as they can, but they're not out there 100% of the time. So it is possible that certain elements are being missed when they're not there.
But how do we know, what is best practice, if you will, in this area? And you don't have to answer that now, but I'm saying, why not look at this? I mean, Peter, this is very much something we do need to look into. Maybe we can't do anything today, but if you go look into, well, you know, if you have this many projects going on, we should have this many inspectors spending this much time, right? If it's a subdivision that is, let's see, what subdivision is going on? The big one, which one is it? It's Moses or?
King's Landing. King's Landing?
Yeah, the 15s out of 1,200, right?
Yeah, King's Landing's like,
Okay,
right.
so what is you know, we don't have to have a lesson in all of that, but my concern, and clearly, you know, to Councilman Smith's point is, well, what does that look like to really have, and I know there's an impact and it's kind of like a domino effect, but I know that is worth looking at. We need to, because then, you know, passing some ordinance that says, oh, let's up our standards. Okay. And then what? You know, then you got the next council going, hey, I don't know who did this, but these streets are falling apart. And blah. You know, let's start from the ground up. So Peter, I would suggest that I'm not suggesting, I'm advising, directing a clear, I guess, we need to know what this looks like from the ground up, because we're starting at the top here, and we need to know what is the impact, how many more people do we need, what does this really look like if we really put some focus on this initiative, which is the inspections.
We can do something in the next 2 weeks before we get to the adopted budget, and if we can get a recommendation, we can amend what we're recommending today.
I know, I can address some of this.
So we'll show two things, how many more positions and what would be the fee increase, and we do it over the remaining 3 years. But Councilman Smith is right. It's both things.
Yeah.
We did do, Jeff, we approved administratively, like we have the ability to do through the Unified Development Code, better standards, getting rid of the plastic, piece of plastic that they used to use to hold the street together. You can't use that anymore, but still, even after that, developers told me to my face, your standards are still weak. So, okay, great, let's update them again. So that's what Jeff's working on now.
Yeah, no, and we agree, but the inspections is most important.
I know,
Peter.
So we need both things.
We've heard that for years. People are doing what they want. I mean, you know, there's not a lot of oversight.
Exactly. So we'll do, in the next 2 weeks, we'll come back with the amendment process to show what can we do to beef up the inspections, and what would that translate to the developer to see.
Councilman Hernandez.
Okay. Well, I want to add something to this that we're doing at the audit committee. And we're instituting a construction audit process, which would help not only in the inspections, but also to be able to audit the actual construction companies in their processes and what they're doing. So that would have to be an update for and we want to include that in the CIP to where audits are included in the overall cost. So that would Camille, you would have to talk with Kimberly as to what is needed there. But also our contracts with these companies, or any kind of agreements that they have to accept audits from the city to make sure that they're doing that. So that would help not only the inspection process, but going beyond that and working and auditing their processes directly and see if they're actually doing what they're doing by evaluating their books.
No, anything to help, and that's a great point.
So I think if we include that as part of it, not only inspection, but also a random audit of whatever street they construct, then we can look at that from that perspective and get into the details. So it's not just looking at what they did; it's looking at their books to say what they actually did.
Right.
So I think if we include that as part of the process, and this is something that's new.
Right.
We've never done this before. And we're going to be, next year is going to be our first year that we're going to be doing this. So I think it's something that, you know, is going to have a second set of eyes to make sure that these companies are doing what they say they're doing. And looking at our processes as well.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I think
Thank you for that.
if we can include that as well as part of this, Peter, and then have it as part of, you know, institutionalized, not only in our contracts, our agreements, inspection requirements, all that the whole 9 yards, we'll be in a much better place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Presley.
Yeah, you know, this has been a long historical issue in the city, and one that has always kind of driven me crazy. We put in these subdivisions, and a year or so after the subdivision is completed, the city's back in there trying to fix the streets, which are coming apart. But a little bit in defense of the developer community is the fact that, you know, we require them to put the streets in, the infrastructure and everything that goes under the streets, and then they commence building and drive concrete trucks and 18-wheelers and everything on those streets, which were never designed to support that kind of traffic. So by the time the homes are all built out, the roads have had almost 10 years of work put on top of them before, you know, anybody ever moves into the subdivision. So there has to be kind of a balance here that we, you know, strike on this. But and I don't know how the inspection process is, and I've always said that the city just doesn't have a high enough level of inspections to make sure that the work is being done properly. And that's true on any, and Jeff, you know this, that's true on any road construction project you ever do. You have to have somebody out there almost constantly to make sure that it's being done correctly. So it's something we need to address.
It is, and that's what Peter will come back with here in a couple of weeks. So gentlemen, I don't see any other questions. I think, is that your last slide?
No, I'm not quite done yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So,
Okay, okay.
now we're getting to the meat. So these are the deltas. These are what's driving those changes in the budget. So
Okay.
the first one is an enhancement in construction management to better posture for managing facilities projects. So if you went back before the recent bonds, we didn't do that much facilities work. It was almost 100% roads,
Right.
maybe a little bit of parks. Now we got things like Police Training Academy, Fire Station number 3, and there's a lot of other facilities projects that the operating departments are putting in, you know, warehouse, we've got work at the airport, terminal improvements. So we're trying to get our skill sets and numbers a little bit more focused to be able to manage better those facility projects, vertical building projects.
What do you, Jeff, what do you have now? How many currently to do all those things?
On facilities,
Yep.
So currently I have 2 individuals, and one of those individuals is helping out on the private developments as well. So this will bring me up
Okay.
to, a team of 5. I'm
Right.
gonna have a
And
team.
back to oversight. Great.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
okay, the next one is in Rotna's division. She would like a new senior project manager and a management assistant. And again, this is just to keep up with our increased workload.
Okay.
And then in Claudia's division, we've got 2 positions, contract funds administrator and a management assistant. And this is just to be able to satisfy our obligations of getting people paid in time and,
Yeah. Hire away.
and now this is the big one, and this is actually something that was requested by utilities. As you've seen, their CIP has grown, and they're doing more and larger projects at the treatment plants. And they've asked that on certain projects of a certain scale that we have a dedicated full-time person on that project. They're perfectly willing to fund this out of their projects, and they're asking for more inspection.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
This is similar to what we were just talking about. So
Right.
they want more oversight on the, and we agree
Yes.
with it. And they
We-
worked hard to get to this number.
Absolutely.
We won't fill all 12 at once. We're going to gradually see how many does it really
Good.
take, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilman Pusley? Was that an old light?
Yeah, it is, but I'd like to wait till Jeff's through.
All right, that was
I
it.
think he's
That's
through,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
That was my last
Okay,
slide.
so we're gonna do water next.
No, we're not.
We're
I
gonna-
mean, at our next meeting, we'll
Yes,
do
sir.
water.
Yes,
Okay.
water, wastewater at the next meeting.
Okay, I would like to ask Peter, we talked a little bit about this morning, but when the water department makes their presentation, let's review where we are on the water release requirements.
Great.
And
We can.
we need to discuss that. It hasn't been discussed by city council in years.
Okay.
And we need to have a full understanding of what we're doing there and whether we're doing what we're supposed to do and if are doing more than we're supposed to do.
Good. That's a good idea, Councilman. We'll include that.
Okay.
What
Thank you.
Councilman Pusley's talking about is releasing water from the
Right.
Lake Corpus Christi Dam to keep salinity levels at a certain point. It's an agreement, or it's I guess an order, agreed upon order that the city has with TxDOT that was entered into decades ago. But there's always been questions about it. It's, so we'll bring that. Good idea.
Yeah, and my concern is I've seen it rain 10 inches here in the Back Bay area, and the next week we're releasing water over the dam. And
Right.
I'm going, why are we doing that?
Yeah, just to let you know, right now, we're not releasing any.
Okay.
All that rain we got and more is coming to the reservoir, and we're not releasing anything right now.
Good.
Yes, sir.
And Councilman Pusley, would it be more appropriate in council rather than, because it doesn't have anything to do with the budget?
Well, I don't know.
Give council a brief, and then the public has better eyes on it, too.
However y'all want to do it.
At
we
the
just
city
need to
council meeting, we
discuss
can add it on Tuesday's council meeting, when we put the final agenda out tomorrow. That's
Fine
probably a
with me.
better idea. We'll do that. We'll do it for
Fine.
this Tuesday, Councilman.
Yeah, the
Pusley.
public needs
Yeah.
to hear that we're discussing it.
Okay, great. I like that. That's good.
Okay.
No problem.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you for the presentation. God bless you all.
During the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Lord, yes. I adjourn, with no further business, I adjourn this meeting.